home.
When you take all of the decisions out of the city of Detroit, all of us, then what do you have? Exactly what we got, a lot of problems. Every time the city seems to fall into a problem, it's always on the back workers.
You wake up out of a dead sleep and you jump behind the wheel and take off driving and try to get everybody there safe, not knowing really what you're pulling up to. I'm not eligible for Social Security, so the pension is my sole salary at this point.
We've been in business here 39 years. We've seen a lot of changes in Detroit. The area was a lot of industry, a lot of city workers. It's getting very tough for the city workers. It's getting tough for us as a business people.
Response times are increasing because of the closing of companies, which takes your insurance rate through the roof. So all the things that affect us affect the citizens.
I worked for the city in different capacities for 29 years. I feel like an old jacket. They use me up and they throw me away. In my condition, nobody's gonna hire me. I'm 68 years old. Half the times, I can't get my blood pressure medicine. It's either feeding myself, blood pressure, or paying bills.
$7.54. By the time they take all the deductions for I have my car insurance, my house insurance, and my health insurance taken out. So the time they take all that, I'll get about $300 after they take all that out. I don't understand it. I can't see how the governor's allowing this to happen and what they're doing and they want to blame it all on the seniors. Not only the seniors, but the city workers. And we worked hard. I know I worked hard.
I've been in Detroit since 1946. I was 14 years old when I came in. I don't live large at all. I wish I could. I don't know when the last time I've been shopping. I only get $1,100, and I'm 81 years old, and I need every penny that I can get and that I do get. And I'm very, very upset about the idea of them taking away my pensions that I worked 30 years for. I think it's terrible that they talk about Detroit like they do, because Detroit has been very good to me.
I have a lot of city workers coming in with their uniforms on, Detroit Water Department, Police Department, Fire Department. I get a lot of people, the Border Patrol come in. So if I lose that customer base, I'm going to be in a position where I might have to close down. If they take away their pensions, if they start cutting jobs, it's going to cut into a large percentage of not only our business, but other businesses that are in the city of Detroit. We're here. We've been here for 26 years. We're still trying to do business in the city.
Detroiters are survivors. They tough, they adapt, but only can do so much when your politicians are ahead of you and we're not on the same team. We're not gonna let Detroit be erased, bulldozed to where we're gonna fight to the bitter end. Detroit gonna survive.
So, same time next week?
Well, of course.
Put away a few bucks, feel like $1 million. For free tips to help you save, go to Feed the Pig.
Online, this is the Bill Press Show.
Morning, everybody. It's Jimmy Williams in for Bill Press. He is out today. Where is Bill Press today? What is he doing today? Botox, lifts? What is he doing today? I need to know.
He's going to look fabulous tomorrow. That's
it's 6 o'clock in the morning. Everyone looks fabulous. Everyone looks fabulous at 6 o'clock in the morning. Anyway, I'm in for Bill Press today from 6 to 9, and we are glad that you are with us this morning. Good morning, Peter.
Hey, Jimmy.
How are you?
Welcome back, bud.
It's nice to be here.
Nice to have you.
What is today? Is today Tuesday?
Today is Tuesday all day long.
All day long. In case you're wondering, folks, today is Tuesday, June 23rd, and this is the Bill Press Show. Alicia, how are you?
Good morning. We missed you.
Well,
it's so...
This will at least one part of my heart. That's good. Jamie's here. Cyprian's. Everyone's here this morning. I think the mice are even in the building, which is awesome. They're not awake, but we are.
Right, exactly.
They are. Hey, guys, you can listen to us. Listen to the Bill Press Show on iHeartRadio app. You can also listen to us on TuneIn app using the Progressive Voices channel. You should also go to Facebook. You've heard of Facebook. That thing that Mr. Zuckerberg owns. Facebook.com/Bill Press Show. And obviously, you can tweet us at BP Show. You've heard of Twitter, too. Go use it. Go use Facebook. If my mother can use Facebook, you can too. So, live on Free Speech TV and TawkrTV, and our YouTube channel, youtube.com/TAWKRTV. That is not how you spell Talker, but it is in Bill Press world.
From here on out, that's how we spell Talker.
From here on out. You can also reach us on the phone, and we love your questions. 866-55-PRESS. 866-55-PRESS. We got a lot of stuff to get to this morning. A lot of stuff. I mean, all kinds of stuff's happening down in South Carolina. The president is addressing race. We got all kinds of things that we're going to get to. We've got 3 hours to do it. But first,
this is the Full Court Press.
Yes, indeed. Just a couple of other stories making news. Diddy, Puff Daddy, Sean Combs, whatever you want to call him, he is in hot water. He was arrested yesterday at the UCLA football summer workout. Now, his son, Justin, plays for the UCLA football team. So what happened is one of the coaches, a man by the name of Sal Alosi, kicked Justin out of practice because of a lack of effort on Monday morning. So Sean Combs arrived at the UCLA athletic facility to confront the coach. The coach then asked campus security to come and intervene, and that is when an alleged assault took place. It involved a kettlebell, by the way.
Oh, dear.
Yeah.
Ouch.
No major injuries reported. Everything seems to be okay. According to the campus newspaper there, Alosi put his hands up in a non-threatening way, instructed Combs to get his father out of the office. Diddy then walked into Alosi's hand and told Alosi not to put his hands on him. From there on out, it only escalated.
Where is Taylor Swift when you need her?
That's right. Yeah. We need someone to come in and break this up, right?
That's exactly it.
While we're talking sports, bad news for Pete Rose. For this whole time, Pete Rose, we knew he was a gambler, and we knew that he gambled when he was involved in baseball. He has always said that he never, ever betted on baseball while he was a player.
Okay.
It turns out that is not the case. ESPN's Outside the Lines obtained a notebook that has very meticulous records of Mr. Rose's betting, which, by the way, if you're going to be betting on baseball while you're a player, maybe don't keep such detailed records.
Pen and paper.
The documents were obtained from a notebook seized from the home of former Rose associate Michael Bertolini during a raid by the U.S. Postal Inspection Service back in 1989 that has not surfaced until just recently. So this shows that Pete Rose was betting on baseball while he was playing.
And I repeat,
bad
where is
news.
Taylor Swift when you need her?
This is when we need her the most.
The moral of the story.
This is when we need her the most. And let's do one more sports story since we're in that mood here on the Full Court Press. The 2020 Olympics are coming up here in just a couple of years. It's going to happen in Tokyo. And yesterday, 8 new sports were submitted for nominations to see if they could actually be in the Olympics. So what are some of the ones that we might see? Now, again, this doesn't mean that they're in the Olympics, but they are being considered. Baseball might be coming back.
I've heard of that.
You've heard of baseball?
Yes.
Bowling, which
Oh.
You're an Olympic bowler?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Karate.
I've heard of that.
You've heard of that. Roller sports.
I don't know what.
Which that could mean, that could mean roller ball or roller derby. That could mean a number of things. Sports climbing.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Squash.
Oh,
yeah.
I love it. It's fabulous in the summer.
Yeah, that's
It's a cultural
lightly
sport.
grilled with a little olive oil and sea salt.
Little red pepper flakes. It's fabulous.
And surfing. Also on the list of things that might be.
Okay.
Yeah.
Not to disrespect anyone that was caught in that horrible typhoon, but the waves off of Japan
Yeah.
I'm telling you.
outrageous.
I'm telling you.
Especially when there's seismic activity going.
Yeah, I'm telling you, they could be huge.
I think they need to really rethink this surfing thing because that's dangerous. I mean, and again, out of respect for the people that passed
Of course.
away, yes.
There you go.
Wow.
There it is. That's all I got.
That's all you got. Well, since we're all sports affiliated this morning.
I want to see Olympic bowling. I would watch.
I don't even look. So I bowled like 3 times, and I think both of the times were 2 of the 3 times I might have been under the influence of something that until most recently was illegal in a lot of places. And I was probably 15, 16, which meant I was definitely breaking the law. But the statute of limitations has passed on that. Oh well. And so I can tell you this: I don't bowl well,
No.
and but a lot of people do. Listen, Laverne and Shirley. Remember Laverne and Shirley? They were bowling all the time on that show, and it was a big deal.
I think that for it to be considered an Olympic sport, it shouldn't be a sport if you get better at it the more that you drink. That's my criteria for an Olympic sport, right?
That's true.
Golf, also the same way.
Right.
Bowling.
You have to sweat
Shuffleboard.
at some point.
Yeah.
If it's considered a sport, you must beads of. I mean, obviously surfing. That we just talked about the surfing, and so you're going to get wet anyway because you're in the water.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'm just
There's
concerned.
some athletic ability involved there.
Right. I mean, even in the Winter Olympics, they sweat. So
Yeah.
I mean, is this the Summer Olympics or
This
the
is Summer Olympics.
Summer Olympics? So then you definitely have to sweat.
Yeah.
And I have been to Japan. I've been to Tokyo, and I can tell you, in August it is very warm there.
I believe it.
Yes. And so it's an island, as you know. It's a bunch of islands. And it can get warm, and the humidity is unbelievable there. So here's the great thing about the Olympics. People will decide.
Yeah.
Now, the people that will decide are, I think, the International Olympic Committee. They're about as, clean as FIFA or something
Yeah,
like
exactly.
that. Which is, I suppose, okay. But the bottom line is, I don't really see bowling as an Olympic sport, but if it's the will of the peoples, it is the will of the people.
people
So
speak.
there it is. That's exactly right. So let's continue on the sports theme, and then we'll actually get to something like politics, because some stuff's happening in this country. Former Major League player Darrell Hamilton was killed yesterday in an apparent murder-suicide in Pearland, Texas. I don't even know where that is, but it's in Texas.
Yeah.
He played for 5 teams over 13 seasons. He was in the 2000 World Series with the New York Mets. He was an outfielder, and he was found dead at his home after an apparent murder-suicide, and apparently his wife is the one that did it.
Yeah, it's a sad story.
He was
man.
only 50 years old. That's sad.
Yeah, it's a sad story.
It's sports. You know what? When I was a kid, all right, so we're going to do like old home week, right? So when I was a child, and I walked to school 13 miles in the snow because it snowed in South Carolina, not. And so, I guess we looked at our sports figures and we revered them. And then when they fell from grace, you mentioned Pete Rose earlier, and our sports figures lifted us up. They were models. They were the people that we said, I want to be just like her. I want to be just like him. When I was a kid, my father was a tennis pro. I eventually became a tennis pro when I graduated from college because I had absolutely no idea what I wanted to do. And my heroes were Bjorn Borg, Martina Navratilova, Chris Everett, because they went out there and they gave it their all. They lived great lives, blah, 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 blah. Pete Rose, when he fell from grace, I remember it distinctly. You do too. That was tough.
Yeah.
Because, you didn't expect, especially coming into the modern era, the open era of sports, if you will, that these people, who, by the way, are essentially human, aren't they? That these people would fall from grace. But the ones that you look at and I don't know the answer to this, but I have to ask the question: are today's sports heroes like yesterday's sports heroes? If I don't know.
No, that's a good way to put it. I think the turning point for me, anyway, was that great either interview or commercial where Charles Barkley famously said, "I am not a role model."
Indeed, he did.
Yeah, he put it out there in a big way. I am not a role model. You don't want to be like me. You don't want to emulate me. I play sports, and I got a lot of problems. I am not a role model. Don't try and live your life to be like me. And that, I think, changed everybody's perception of players and people who play sports. It was a big, big deal.
Speaking of role models, let's move into politics.
Oh, man.
Because there's just so many out there for us to choose from. Not. This is going to sound cray-cray, but I'm going to praise the Republican governor of South Carolina, Nikki Haley. Now, I know everyone. I know Peter's having a heart attack. Even my father is rolling around in his grave right now. God rest his little Confederate soul. And, you know, what Nikki Haley did yesterday, you talk about bravery. I mean, listen, this is South Carolina. You know, the Civil War started in South Carolina. It has always been a symbol of that era, per se. And Peter, you're from South Carolina. I'm from South Carolina. We know how that place ticks, how it thinks, how it hums. Mm-hmm. And what fascinates me the most is that a Republican governor of a Republican state, after the Charleston 9, after Mother Emanuel, actually showed the courage and the leadership to say to the General Assembly, which is overwhelmingly Republican in both chambers, you're going to pass a bill to take this flag down.
Yeah.
And that took huge chutzpah, and I got to give it to her. I really got to give it to her.
Yeah.
And now I will say this. You know, I said that on Twitter yesterday. And, of course, you know, Twitter lit me up to a large degree saying, hang on, she's doing this for political expediency, blah, blah, blah. It is a true statement.
Yeah.
Worthy of all men to be received that, in fact, Nikki Haley has been safely reelected and she has nothing to lose. I will say that. That is a true statement. But she did it nonetheless. And I will take it when it can come from someone like a Republican like Nikki Haley in South Carolina, who I have criticized on policy perspectives, on ethics perspectives, and on political perspectives for now going on, 6 or 7 years. And so if she's going to step up to the plate and she actually hits a home run, then we should say thank you for hitting a home run.
Yeah.
Now, the next question is what does the Republican-led General Assembly, the House and the Senate of South Carolina do?
Yeah. Look, it would have been great to have her step up earlier, but that kind of doesn't matter. That's hardly the point. The fact that we know how this could end for her.
Right.
David Beasley, the former governor, called for the flag to be taken down in 96.
And lost because of it.
And lost solely because of that.
That's correct.
Like, that was the one reason that got him thrown out of office. He was voted out.
Yes.
When a governor less than 20 years ago said, we need to take it down. Mm-hmm. He lost that election.
Yes.
So Nikki Haley knows what's at stake here for her politically.
That's right.
So, yeah, it's might be a little opportunistic, and yes, the winds of change have already blown, and she's just writing that, but it doesn't really matter. For her to stand up there and call for it to be taken down is a really big deal. It's a really big deal.
Behind her was State Senator John Corson, and he's a Republican. Listen, the Speaker of the House, Jay Lucas in South Carolina, and the President Pro Tem, a guy named Hugh Leatherman. Both are from Florence County, by the way. Actually, Lucas is from Darlington County. Leatherman is from Florence County, which is the PD area of South Carolina. If you have ever traveled on I-95, then you have gone through the PD of South Carolina. It's a lovely place. And they both now have to do something here, which is they have to figure out how to get 2/3 of both of those chambers of the members to vote to do this. Now, you'll recall that this flag used to fly atop of the Capitol Dome.
Yeah.
And then in 2000, due in large part because Charleston's Mayor Joe Riley marched with a bulletproof vest on from Charleston to Columbia, South Carolina, on foot to protest the flag. This is a man who went to the Citadel, my alma mater, where the Confederate flag is revered almost pathologically, if you will. And so he marched and said it's got to come down. The African-American leaders in South Carolina said it's got to come down. So what did they do? They compromised, right? They compromised, they took it down, and they put it up on a big, huge flagpole literally in front of the Capitol. So before, you could see it on top of the Capitol Dome, but it was about the size of, like, a nose hair of mine.
Yeah.
Which I have lots of those, right? But the point is that when they took it down and put it on that flagpole, it was so huge that you didn't even see the state capitol behind it, because all you could see was this battle flag right in front of the Confederate memorial. So
much more prominently featured now.
Oh, and big time. And by the way, they made it they found out that there's no wind that comes through there, okay? Because, see, you got this tall building to the north, you've got, blah, blah, blah. And so there was a cotton flag at first. And then they realized that, in fact, cotton, when it gets wet, because it's so humid, that it doesn't move. So they changed it to a nylon flag so it at least would flap if a bus drove by, right? Kind of a thing. That's literally the mentality of this compromise.
Gotta see those colors.
And so people, I don't think people get the flag. I don't think people, I think now they do. I think people have now finally figured out that if you go back and you read South Carolina's Articles of Secession, it says slavery about 3,000 times. Every state, and by the way, South Carolina was the first state to secede from the Union, then this is what you have to deal with. And this, we're going to keep talking about this, but right now we're going to go to break. We'll be right back.
This is the Bill Press Show.
What? Silicon Valley, Santa Clara County is often portrayed as a role model for the rest of the country. The county has some of the highest salaries and most expensive real estate in America, which part to the phenomenal success of tech companies such as Google, Yahoo, Intel, Adobe, and of course Apple, the nation's wealthiest and most profitable company. But Santa Clara County also has a more unseemly distinction. I'm standing near downtown San Jose, inside what is by some accounts the largest homeless encampment in America. The jungle, as it's known, occupies a 65-acre stretch of creek. 100 people live in makeshift structures. It's less of a homeless encampment than a full-blown shantytown.
This being the largest homeless encampment in the United States, and with us having Silicon Valley with Steve Jobs and all this cash, we're not supposed to have this kind of homeless problem. You know what I mean?
I done been shot with a pellet gun like 4 times, attacked with baseball bats, my house set on fire.
This is like hell on earth. I mean, this is like something you will not see. You have to see to believe, actually. It's like fourth world conditions.
Hi, have you ever heard of a place called the Jungle? Sorry? A place called the Jungle, have you heard of it?
We're not making enough money really for conventional homes or housing, and we make too much money for subsidized homes. So we're kind of, floating between the oil and the water.
We told the landlady here if it would be possible to continue staying here. She said, no, you got to go. I already rented it out. We went and loaded things into a storage facility, and it's still there. And all the campgrounds and things that we saw were too far out of the city, like KOAs and that sort of thing. So what we decided to do was to move into the jungle. So that's what we did.
A few days ago, a woman named Lydia Hernandez was robbed inside of her tent. When she refused to hand over the money, the robbers slit her throat. When she still fought back, they bashed her head with an axe. She died a few hours later. Residents say that the police never come into the jungle, so they have to fend for themselves.
There's no law down there except our own, right? There's no law, so we could smoke dope all day in the open. The dope dealers ain't scared because they're secure.
We go to the Fairmont Hotel and have a brunch or do a philanthropy. That's not going to cut it. We need billions of dollars to go into the inner cities and go into the jungle. Silicon Valley, the Bay Area is known for its innovation, its progressive thinking. It's one of the most progressive pockets in the United States, if not the world, and certainly one of the wealthiest. If we can't do it here, it won't happen anywhere. It's got to happen here.
At Earth Justice, we defend the environment in the courtroom. Join our fight. When you take a seat, you take a stand. Earth Justice, because the earth needs a good lawyer.
This is the Bill Press Show.
It's Jimmy Williams, and we are back. Try calling us, please. 866-55-PRESS, 866-557-7377, in case you can't spell press. Peter.
What a day to have you in here, man.
What a day to talk about the Confederate flag.
fellow South Carolinian.
I know, exactly. This is cray-cray. So, apparently, Walmart has decided it's going to stop selling Confederate memorabilia.
Yeah.
How nice of them.
I mean,
I guess when you're already a trillionaire, you just don't have to worry about it, right?
Yeah.
Right, and that's a good thing.
I mean, I'm all for them not selling it. I wish they'd also stop selling guns. But, yeah, I mean, it's a big step for them to stop selling it. You've been in Walmarts in the South, I'm sure.
Unfortunately, yes.
Unfortunately.
Yes.
Which, for my entertainment dollar, is really...
they ought to set up benches. Like
I'm telling
you. Theaters, stadium seating in there.
But, they have it. They've got all this Confederate flag stuff that they sell in Walmart. So this is a big step for them.
It is indeed. We've got Paul from, let me see if I've got this right, Lucerne, California. Paul?
Hey.
Good morning. Paul, what time is it in California? What are you doing up?
I'm kind of a late guy. I stay up till about 4:30 in the morning.
You a thinker or a drinker?
Or both?
Well, I'm doing research for a book, and I do the research at this time because my house is really quiet.
Nice.
What's your take on this, Paul?
My comment is, the original state members that rose the flag was to celebrate the war, and it was supposed to stay up as long as the war. Then nobody had the guts to take it down. Back in the 90s, they said, hey, they signed a petition to take it down. They're still signing a petition to take it down, the ones that are alive.
This
all right, thanks, Bud.
Is the Bill Press Show.
Officer, were you the one who arrested me? Gonna shake my hand? So I got invited to host a vigil called Carry the Names. And that's what they were doing, carrying the names of the people who were victims of deadly police force. Michael Brown, Eric Garner, Akai Gurley. I got a motion from Dragonfly from Stop Shopping Choir, and I started preaching. I preached up a storm as best I could, but about a minute and a half into my sermon, the place was flooded with police, Homeland Security, National Guard, state troopers, and I was pushed over and handcuffed so fast, down in the jail, down in the basement. Before you know it, I was out the door, put in prison overnight. The next morning, I'm in court, the same thing happens. I'm just rushed out of there. Then our lawyer, Wiley Steckler, gives me this iPhone, and there, in black and white, in the Gothamist, a popular paper, is this charge by Adam Lisberg, the MTA law enforcement spokesperson for this grand place. His quote is that I, Reverend Billy, physically attacked a police officer. Unbelievable. The feeling of being robbed of my work and life and identity, just the fiction. I did not touch anybody. I did not look. I know how to do this. I'm trained in nonviolence. I did not do anything. It was right here. It was right here. It happened right here. I was simply arrested while I was speaking and taken away, and that's it. The cold feeling in my city, the city that I love, that city spokespersons whose salary I pay for with my taxes, that they would say this. I could just feel the rending apart of the community, that we are not that close. We're not. They are willing to say this, and they think that they can just say anything about anybody and get away with it.
So we have something in the Church of Stop Shopping called radical forgiveness. Amen?
Cops and bankers love their children.
I forgive the police.
We gotta love them too. Cops and bankers love their mothers.
But I'll stay radical.
Mothers love their brothers. We gotta love them too.
But we'll wake up every morning forgiving each other, reaching out, touching, telling stories, having humor, being in a community together, sharing our children, sharing the streets, sharing the climate, being in the city together. But forgiving each other, being grateful to each other, helping each other out, living together, living together.
I got a daughter just turned 4. What do we do in the superstore? What do we do with the blood and the gore? The water's rising through our door. Love our children too. Love our children too.
Amen. Earth-alleluia.
The average text takes your eyes off the road for nearly 5 seconds. At highway speeds, that's enough time to travel the length of a football field. Stop the texts, stop the wrecks.
The most valuable morning radio show, according to The Nation magazine. This is The Bill Press Show.
Jimmy Williams in for Bill Press, and my friend Arthur Delaney from the Huffington Post is here. Arthur, good morning.
Good morning, Jimmy.
It is always a pleasure to see you, hear you, and talk to you. You can get Arthur at Arthur Delaney HP on Twitter.
Oh, please do that.
Please go like Arthur Delaney HP right now. If you can't spell Delaney, I can't talk to you. You can also go to HuffingtonPost.com, and if you can find Arthur in HuffingtonPost.com, because there's 8 trillion things at HuffingtonPost.com, then you're a better person than I am, because I still, after all these years, cannot find Arthur Delaney at HuffingtonPost.com.
You can go to Google.
I can Google Nation.
Put Arthur Delaney right there.
Yeah. Arthur Delaney.
My author page will pop right up.
Pop right. See, I tried that with Sam Stein the other day and it didn't work. Like,
well, this is
not user not found.
That something went wrong there. But this is the thing people don't recognize about Huffington Post, which is that yes, the front page is chaotic and maybe you can't find what you're looking for, but we're organized also by Google, and we're designed for the things you want to be readily available if you type them in.
I don't even know what that means, but I trust you that you know what you're talking about since you work there. I think, right?
Google me.
I'm gonna. All right, so Google Arthur Delaney, Delaney, Arthur. If you can't spell that, I can't help you. Hey, Arthur, I think we've got Anita from San Antonio, Texas, in the line. Anita, good morning.
Good morning, everyone.
How are you?
Hi.
I'm fine.
Fabulous.
I don't think it was so brave for Nikki Haley to finally decide to take down the Confederate flag. 9 people had to die before she realized what that symbol was about. I think it would be brave if she expanded Medicaid or she called out voter suppression tactics.
Well, yes, but can I ask this? We can criticize Nikki. I have criticized, but believe me when I tell you, Anita, I have criticized Nikki Haley more than most human beings on the planet. But should we at least acknowledge that she did it?
Why is there such a low bar for Republicans?
Why is there such a low bar for politicians?
Well, no, really, for Republicans mostly, because this to me, the Confederate flag is so obvious. It had to take this guy, all these pictures of this guy with the Confederate flag in his hand and burning the American flag and then murdering 9 people. I think that's, that to me is just, it had to go that far before Republicans realized what that symbol was all about, really.
Yeah, the guy with the American flag setting it on fire and murdering 9 people was a strong clue that there's something bad about the Confederate flag. But I think Nikki Haley is being praised because the bar had been set low by all the other Republicans who talked about this in the past week. Strangely low, sure, but she was the first person to be bold at all. And I think even though she said this flag is a symbol of our heritage and Dylan Roof, has a terrible and false understanding of it. Well, whatever. That was BS. She still is doing the relatively courageous thing politically, and I think Jimmy makes a good point. We could recognize that.
And there's something else here, which is it's not the latest 9 is just what's in our memory. It's what's in the back of our mouth, the taste of the latest 9. There's also the thousands that died from 1789 until last Wednesday, all under the guise of the Confederacy. And I think that if it's taken us from 1789 to now to finally get South Carolina to take a Confederate flag off of the grounds of state taxpayer-subsidized buildings, if it has finally taken us until June 23rd to get the Speaker of the Mississippi House to say, quote, that the Confederate emblem is offensive and should be removed from the flag, I will take that. Because honestly, as a son of the South, having grown up in South Carolina, and Peter, you may want to weigh in on this, I stand on those shoulders of both good and bad people every day. Their legacy I have to pay for. And frankly, the only thing that I can do is try to give my own legacy, which is don't tolerate it and praise it when people do something good. So Nikki Haley, as a politician and as a policy person, may not want to fix the roads or help poor people or do any, et cetera, et cetera. Her DSS, Department of Social Services, kids have died under her time. But the bottom line is, if she's going to do one thing right, at least she has done this right, even if it's political.
Yeah,
and she's moving the pack. She took a step forward from where
they all have to follow her now,
and they are. Yeah. They immediately did. We had these hilarious statements from Jeb Bush, Scott Walker, saying, "Well, I also like Nikki Haley. I think it's time to move on." They
although Rubio didn't really.
He stayed mum.
Yeah,
it was a few guys, but the point is, it's clear that she is moving the pile, and that's good. That actually is leadership in a small way.
But duly noted, Anita. Duly noted. As a governor, Nikki Haley, when it comes to expanding Medicaid, she has failed miserably. We will say that. I acknowledge that part. Yes.
And it took a week to have this reaction to something that is pretty obvious to a lot of people, that this is a symbol of racism and oppression. Like right away, it was obvious to people that this wasn't a totally random shooting. And still, Nikki Haley and a few other people were like, well, we'll never figure this out. But then they changed their tune.
Yeah.
And that's remarkable.
Let me.
The race situation and the flag situation in South Carolina is so much more complicated than people really understand.
Yeah.
The flag thing for years, right? Like I grew up in the middle of this fight, right?
Yeah,
and I know Jimmy, you were there for it too. Yeah. It's like heritage, not hate, right? There are so many people whose family members fought for the Confederacy, and they find that as a sense of pride. And because it's such a culture that's steeped in tradition and history and things like that, it means something to a lot of people. But at some point, you just have to grow up and move past that. I think if you didn't grow up around that, or you didn't see that, or you haven't seen it in action, it's really easy to just point to that and say, well, yeah, this is obviously a racist flag. Like, I know it's easy. And like and for me, it's fairly easy to see it, even though I grew up around it. But I did, for a lot of years, understand where some of these people were coming from. But now, you just can't defend it anymore. We've just grown too much.
It was on the TV. The Dukes of Hazzard had it on their car.
Yeah.
But even that, I remember being, that's weird.
Yeah.
Right.
But if you are, it's easy to see how if you were in that milieu, you would. I
can't spell that either.
I don't know
what it means, but
I actually don't know what that word means. Sorry.
There was speaking of men of letters, since Arthur's just taking us down that awful wormhole of milieu, George Santayana, who's this great man of letters, said, the loyalty to our ancestors does not include loyalty to their mistakes. And I think that's important for us to remember.
That's one of the great things. That's why I've embraced, as I have gotten older, I've embraced my Southern roots a little bit more, because one great thing about the South is they don't run from their history. they don't run from.
Well, we lost. So
yeah, right. I get that.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I remind people, we lost. Get over it.
Yeah. But it's. I mean, when you go to downtown Charleston, there's Market Street. That's the slave market.
Well, actually, that was not the slave market.
Well, that's okay.
That's what people think when they go to Charleston.
Okay.
The slave market was actually 2 blocks over.
Okay.
Right. But I'm sure slaves walked through there at one point. Right.
Okay.
By the way, in shackles, but that's a separate issue.
So there's that. You got the plantations everywhere,
Yes.
right? Like there's these constant reminders of what a terrible place, what terrible things happen there.
Right.
So, I welcome that discussion. I'm glad that that's still in the mix of when you're in the South, you get to see and you're confronted with these bad things that happen there, and you're forced to deal with those.
Yeah, no.
Everybody has to make a point. If you grow up in the South, everybody has to make a choice at some point, right? You find that point in your life where you either buy into some of the crap that your relatives or some of the people that you grew up with are feeding you, or you go a different direction and realize that that's all old, terrible, bad idea crap. So the fact that the Confederate flag still exists is one thing, but the fact that it sits on the grounds that represents all of the people of South Carolina is a totally different thing. You can't have it represent everybody in South Carolina.
Back in 2000, I had a nanny when I was growing up. She raised my brother. She was African American. Her name was Bertha, and she was a fierce, fierce woman. And I asked her what she thought about it, the flag, because this was a big debate in South Carolina. And she said, "Well, how do you think it makes me feel?"
Yeah.
And for the first time in my entire life, it occurred to me, maybe my thoughts on the Confederacy hurt someone else that I care about. And then when that feeling rushes up into you, you realize you're on the wrong side of humanity.
Yeah.
And so you gotta take that stuff. Again, if we can't forget the things that happened, but we certainly can't live in the past. And that, I think, is very, very key. We got John from Minneapolis, Minnesota. Good morning, John.
Yeah, I just wanted to make several points. The flag also represents the disillusionment or disillusion of the, or breaking up rather, would be a better, easier word, of the Union, and we fought a war against that. And, I find, we all have blood on our hands. In the Northeast, the revelations of the people who started Brown University, Providence was the largest slaving community. The wealth that was created originally in that community came from slaving. So, we're all part of, whatever, for better or for worse, a history that is quite bloody, the genocide of the Indians. But I wanted to say that, we won a war. There was a lot of people who died, and the Union won. And so that symbol should not be allowed politically to exist anywhere.
Morally. It should not be allowed morally to exist. Politically, you're right. But I think this is a moral. People talk about how this is culture, this is heritage. This is a moral issue. Because we fought a war over, when I was a kid, John, I was told that we fought the war of northern aggression. That was what we called it. I cannot make it up.
Yeah.
We fought a war of northern aggression because it was about commerce and economics. Yeah. When you have free labor, it is economics. It's also a moral issue. Because when you don't pay people to do something and you kill them because of their race and you keep them enslaved because of their race, you're talking about a moral issue. So the flag is a moral issue. And I think, we talked earlier about Walmart. I mean, Arthur, you said earlier there's a Walmart in D.C. I would be interested, now that Walmart's not going to carry Confederate memorabilia, I'd be interested if, in fact, so I don't think we've seen it in the Walmart in D.C., but I would be interested if in Luray, Virginia, is there Confederate memorabilia in there? That'd be interesting to see.
Yeah, well, having gone to the Walmart in D.C. a few times, I do not think there was any Confederate memorabilia or Confederate-themed products.
That'd be shocking.
That would be a really weird place for that kind of consumer product.
Yeah.
But yeah, the whole idea that heritage means constantly exalting the symbols and the names of people who fought for them, like Jefferson Davis Highway. Like, do we need that? And people are saying, well, you're talking about eradicating everything that you don't like from history, but it's not like we need a Hitler highway to remember the Holocaust. And that was a joke that Josh Barrow made on Twitter last night.
We love Josh Barrow.
Stuck with me.
Thank you, Arthur. We'll be right back, folks.
This is the Bill Press Show.
When I started learning about nutrition, about which, by the way, much less is known than you might think, I learned that what mattered most about one's health was not necessarily the nutrients, good or bad, that you were consuming or staying away from, or even the calorie counts. But what predicted a healthy diet more than anything else is the fact that it was being cooked by a human being and not a corporation. Corporations cook very differently than people do. They use vast amounts of salt, fat, and sugar, much more than you would ever use in your own cooking. And the reason they do that is those are three incredibly attractive and incredibly cheap ingredients. And when they're layered properly, as in a chip or pastries and forms of junk food, they're incredibly addictive. They really press our buttons. They activate our dopamine network, our cravings. And in fact, people in the industry, they don't talk about addiction in the food industry, even though they traffic in addiction. They talk about craveability. It's the same thing. And snackability is another term they use. It's a lovely word. And then the last point about corporate cooking that's important to understand is they cook different stuff than you do at home. What they're good at, in general, they don't cook that well, but things like chips, they cook incredibly well. And here's a classic food that if you make it yourself, if you've ever made French fries, you have to wash the potatoes, you have to peel the potatoes, you have to slice the potatoes, you have to fry them in a lot of oil, you have to spatter your entire stovetop, you have to clean up, and then you have this pot of oil you have to get rid of. I mean, it's really difficult, and it's a pain. They're wonderful, but it's a pain. And if you make them yourself, you'll only eat them every 6 weeks, 2 months, because it's too much work. But when you let corporations cook for you, it's so simple and so inexpensive, and they're really good, that you will have them twice a day, as many people in America do. So you see the kinds of foods you end up with are these labor-intensive foods and desserts. These special occasion foods become everyday foods when we let industry cook for us. Eat anything you want, just cook it yourself.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. You know, but it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, you know, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello? That's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
On your radio, on TV, and online. This is the Bill Press Show.
Good morning, it's Jimmy Williams. We are back. You can catch us at BillPressShow.com. You can also catch us tweeting at BP Show. I am still here with Arthur Delaney from the Huffington Post. Peter's here, Lisa's here. Everyone is here.
You got it.
Who else is here? Who else is here?
Cyprian's here.
I tell you who's not
Jamie's
here. Bill Press is not
Bill
here.
Press is not here.
Slacker. Hashtag slacker. So I was flirting with someone via text, this dude I'm dating. And so I like hashtagging because I feel like I'm young when I'm not. And so I like tag, buy me dinner, hashtag, when are we going on our next date kind of thing. He's like, aren't hashtags supposed to be really, really short? I'm like, shut up. When are we going on a date? Hashtag. So I do hashtags for everything now.
That's nice.
Yes, my dog hashtags me. It's fabulous.
It's very democratic.
He's a very liberal dog. Steve from Charlotte, North Carolina. Good morning, Steve, in the Queen City.
How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
I was calling about your comments regarding Nikki Haley, the governor, which I'm having trouble agreeing with.
Okay.
For one thing, in the press release you made, I thought I saw Rance Priebus in the crowd.
You did indeed.
Yeah, I did. I thought so. And it suddenly dawned on me that she's probably doing what she's being told to do, because the presidential candidates of the Republican Party are jumping through hoops and making fools out of themselves over this issue. And it just smelled to me like Rance got down there and straightened her out. Now, I know you said she's been reelected. She has nothing to gain from this. But quite frankly, we really don't know that.
Well, I disagree.
We don't know.
That's not what I said. What I said was she has nothing to lose. She has everything to gain.
Well, we don't know that either. We don't know where she wants to go or where she intends to go after the governorship, maybe to one of those multi-million-dollar lobbying jobs. Who knows? We don't know that. The fact of the matter is, in my mind, and I live right near there, too close, is that Nikki Haley is the governor of a state within whose borders houses the corridor of shame. And neither she, nor Lindsey Graham, nor any of those other politicians down there have ever done anything about it.
But standing next to her was Jim Clyburn. Is he a bad person?
Nikki Haley.
No, but standing next to Governor Haley was Jim Clyburn, the Democratic congressman from South Carolina. Is he a bad person?
And he's going to do what he needs to do to get that thing down. Look, the Confederacy was a collection of traitors that committed treason.
Okay. All right.
I don't think, what does it mean that Reince Priebus was there? Do you think Nikki Haley is a tool of Priebus? I find that...
Strom Thurmond's son was there.
Yeah, it was just a bunch of people there. I don't think Reince is pulling the strings. But every time we talk about Reince Priebus, if you take the vowels out of his name, you know what you're left with. If you already heard this one, we'll just move on. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, it's. I love how Chris Matthews calls him. Was he Reince? He calls him. What does Chris Matthews call him? Chris Matthews calls him. I think he mispronounces his name.
He does that a lot.
But he does it Dick Cheney. Yes, every time he hears does that, I'm like, I love Chris Matthews, but because he does that, right? I mean, look, Reince Priebus being there is what it is. Paul Thurmond being there is what it is. John Corson, the state Senate leader, Republican, being there is what it is. There were a lot of different people behind. And if you watch the beginning of that, right before Governor Haley came out, literally her handlers were taking people and moving them around according to importance. It was the most, strategery thing you've ever seen in your entire God-given life.
That's how it's done.
That's normal. That is completely and totally normal.
The only thing I thought was unsatisfactory, and even this is not the biggest deal, is her remarks in which she talked about the good meaning of the Confederate battle flag and this notion that Dylan Roof had a monstrous misunderstanding of it. But fine, whatever. That's the compromise that was made.
Yeah.
The lip service she paid to, just a little bit of pandering for people who don't agree with this decision, but still a full-throated endorsement of removing the flag, even though it only initiates a process that they now have to go through legislatively to get rid of it, which is a little weird.
And that is a very good point, and we will be right back.
This is the Bill Press Show.
What gets you into college? Good SAT scores? High GPA? Lots of extracurriculars?
Sure, but what you really need is money.
If you don't have the cash, you'll need a loan.
And we mean huge student loans because the cost of college has risen 1,000% in the last 30 years.
This means big money for the banks that collect fees and interest.
Now, millions of young people are starting their adult lives with an average of $29,000 of loans on their backs.
Altogether, we're talking $1.2 trillion in student debt.
And more people are finding it impossible to pay them back. Welcome to the student debt crisis.
The increasing demand for higher education and cuts to state funding gave colleges a huge incentive to keep inflating prices.
I graduated about a year ago, currently in $35,000 of debt.
I am in debt about like $25,000.
I owe $23,000.
I owe over $50,000 in student loans.
38.8 million Americans owe money on a student loan. And the biggest names in banking are making huge profits off the booming student loan industry.
Sallie Mae, the largest provider of private student loans, made $949 million last year.
They only give you about 6 months to look for a job. You have to start paying back the loan. It's very pressuring, especially nowadays. It's very hard to find a job.
Over half of the students graduating in 2012 could not find a decent paying job.
They either had low-wage jobs or unpaid internships or were unemployed altogether.
So you can't make the payments. You start incurring late fees, which makes the loan even harder to pay off.
And it stays with you for years, even decades.
Right now, a third of the people who started repaying their loans are delinquent or in default.
That's 13.7 million people, more than the populations of Chicago, New York, and San Francisco combined.
Worse, it's not just the borrowers who are in trouble. Many loans require co-signers.
So if the student is unable to pay, that co-signer, a father, a mother, or a grandparent, is now on the hook.
Even a grandparent's Social Security benefits can be garnished to pay the loan.
We should have an answer to this. If you get really behind in your car payment or your credit cards, you can file for bankruptcy.
But Congress has made it nearly impossible to discharge student loans through bankruptcy.
Big institutions make big profits while students try to make ends meet under crushing debt.
Is this how we want our education system to work?
The whole point of going to college is to get the career you want, but lately that's been discouraged because no one can afford school. You get a job just to pay off your student loans.
We need higher education, not higher debt.
Sign up to end the student debt crisis at higherednotdebt.org.
This is the Bill Press Show.
And it's Jimmy Williams, and we are back. And we've only got a little bit of time right here before we move into the 7 o'clocker. But something most people don't know, or if they do know, this is a big deal. President Obama is actually flying to Charleston, South Carolina, Peter, to deliver the eulogy for Senator Pinckney, who was also the reverend, the pastor at Emmanuel AME Church. The vice president will go with him.
Oh, man.
I mean, normally you get a president and a vice president, you have to be like a head of state.
Yeah, that's huge.
Yeah, it's a big deal, and it just shows you the gravity of what has happened down in South Carolina. And I got to tell you, I think what the president and the vice president are doing is awesome. I'm glad they're doing it. It makes me happy.
This is the Bill Press Show.
You wouldn't let money just blow out of your house. So when your AC or heater is on, make sure the doors, windows, and fireplace flue are shut tight. If you're headed out, turn down the AC or lower the heat by 10 degrees. And always keep your water heater set at 120. A little bit of common sense goes a long way. Get more great tips at energysaver.gov.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. But it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello, that's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
West here reporting from Houston, Texas for Climate Desk. Now, one of the biggest uncertainties in climate science right now is the role of clouds. What better way to work that part out than flying right through them? That's what NASA scientists aboard this airplane think. Welcome to NASA's biggest airborne laboratory. You're coming with us today on an 8-hour NASA flight mission.
When you read these big IPCC climate assessments, what's the biggest uncertainty? There's two, right? The role of aerosols and clouds. Clouds is probably bigger than aerosols.
That is a piece of a puzzle that right now we are missing.
You can't get the models right if you don't understand the chemistry and the process.
Now we're being told we've got to get on. The doors are about to shut, so let's go aboard. Every time you turn on the weather, every time you hear a climate change prediction, that information has to come from somewhere. And it starts by getting sucked out of the air from planes like this.
So this mission is to try to understand the emissions from the surface, so mostly biogenic emissions, so from trees and other plants.
Right now we're flying to our very first part of this experiment on the DC-8. Over Arkansas, there's a particularly pungent bouquet of emissions that scientists are interested in measuring.
Well, these emissions lead to both aerosols and to molecules that both destroy and create ozone. So these are very important things to understand for climate studies.
How it will manifest itself, it will be in more accurate and more reliable predictions.
So what we're doing is taking a series of flyovers, each at a different level of the atmosphere, scooping up those emissions, testing them, and hopefully scientists are going to see exactly what's in this column of air all the way up.
The data that we collect in one flight can keep busy 60 scientists and students for 3 years, 4 years. We're still studying data from data collected 20 years ago.
In fact, this particular mission today is its most heavily equipped in its nearly 30 years of service. Each one of these consoles here is a specially equipped scientific instrument designed to collect all sorts of different data in real time.
And this instrument here tracks the sun.
We're looking at mist chambers. They're used to strip soluble gases.
This black line is the CO2. It's about 390 ppm right now.
We're putting these filters in the bags that we've got the aerosols that we trapped out of a certain amount of air. And so we're sampling up here about 150 liters a minute.
That ultimately flows back into the operational models. It flows back into what goes on TV every day.
Anyway, I got to get this sample going.
You do it. It's a busy man at work. We can't let him rest. Well, get this. We've just spent 2 hours crisscrossing this one cloud formation. In, back out again, back in again.
Then they grow, and we track them as long as we can, and then we let it go.
Even one cloud can hold a host of answers to the mysteries of climate change.
The patterns of, where the clouds are, what type of clouds we see, what kind of weather systems they're associated with it, that'll all be shifting in a shifting climate, in a world with climate change.
Then the big spark is this, is when we actually get the meat on the grill. And then it will be some time to process it.
What the frack?
What the frack?
What the frack?
President Obama, are you fracking kidding me?
Reopen the EPA studies.
In Texas, Wyoming, and Pennsylvania.
Fracking pollutes our oceans.
Fracking poisons our water.
Fracking makes climate change worse.
Fracking relies on toxic chemicals that cause cancer. Ban fracking now.
Ban fracking now.
Go on. Ban it.
Ban fracking now.
Please.
At Earth Justice, we defend the environment in the courtroom. Join our fight. When you take a seat, you take a stand. Earth Justice, because the Earth needs a good lawyer.
The average text takes your eyes off the road for nearly 5 seconds. At highway speeds, that's enough time to travel the length of a football field. Stop the texts, stop the wrecks.
Broadcasting around the nation, on your radio, on your TV, and online. This is The Bill Press Show.
And it's Jimmy Williams, and we are back, and we kicked Arthur Delaney out.
Thank God.
I know, that guy. Then we replaced him with another liberal. Igor Volsky. Igor, good morning. It is great to see you.
Good morning. Good to be here.
It is always a pleasure seeing you. You can follow Igor on Twitter at Igor Volsky. You can also find him at thinkprogress.org, which is a fabulous, fabulous group of people. We've been talking about South Carolina. We've been talking about the flag. We've been talking about the fact that the president is going down there. So let's take that and parlay that into 2016. Because I'm fascinated by Jeb Bush on this. I'm fascinated by Marco Rubio's lack of there on this. Mike Huckabee, he could screw up a one-car funeral in Park on this issue. What are your thoughts? Igor, tell me what you think about this, because there's just so much there.
Well, I think every presidential election is full of these unexpected moments that give presidential candidates a chance to really lead. If it's a moral issue, if it's some other kind of issue, to step up to the plate and to do the right thing. And after this tragedy last Wednesday night and the flag debate unfolded, the Republicans not only initially tried to avoid the question of race altogether by questioning whether or not this was even a race issue to begin with.
Right. Yeah.
Of course, after it came out that the shooter was a white supremacist, they quickly acknowledged that, well, of course, race plays a factor.
Not everybody did, by the way. I mean, there were still some people who
are attributing it to mental conditions and mental instability.
Yeah, this guy was not crazy.
It was not crazy.
This guy was a racist.
And then when the flag issue came up, they went to great lengths to say nothing or to say, well, let's leave it up to the state of South Carolina. It's not a presidential issue.
States' rights.
States' rights.
States' rights.
And now we're in a position after Nikki Haley, after a lot of consultation from black leaders in South Carolina, state leaders in South Carolina, did the right thing, as you said earlier this morning, rightly hit a home run.
Yep.
And called for the removal of the flag. And now you have Republicans tripping over themselves.
Astonishing.
To also condemn the flag. Tim Scott, the only black senator in the Senate, had an opportunity last week when he was on what show, Meet the Press, wherever he was on, to say, I am calling for the removal of the flag. It represents hate. It represents slavery. Instead, he said, my position will be clear. Eventually, my position will be clear. And him, along with the entire roster of Republicans, including Jeb Bush, who you mentioned, because as governor of Florida, he removed the flag from the Florida Capitol.
He did indeed.
Didn't have the guts to do what Nikki Haley did. And it's really astonishing. And it says that a lot of these presidential candidates can't read the state of the country. They don't know where the American people are. And that doesn't bode well for the nomination contest or for the general election.
The Tim Scott thing is interesting because he really, I thought, with the North Charleston shooting, came out front and square and center on that with the body cameras, calling on demanding a hearing, by the way, of his senior senator's judiciary subcommittee, just in case anyone was wondering about that. And
this was the Walter Scott shooting.
The Walter Scott shooting, that's exactly right, which was the country watched horrified. They watched that and were horrified. Most of the country. And Tim Scott showed a little bit of leadership there. And I said, I praised him for that. I thought he had done a good job there. But then it's almost like the bitterest taste is left in my mouth because of what he did on Meet the Press. And it just makes me think, who was he talking to on Meet the Press? And here we are, as you said, Igor, they are literally tripping over themselves.
Yeah.
The Mississippi Speaker of the House is now saying that, in fact, the Confederate emblem should be removed from the state flag. You think? This is 2015, okay?
What surprised me, I just came back from South Carolina. We were shooting some video there, and we spoke to State Senator Brad Huma, I believe his name.
Hutto.
Hutto.
Yes, yeah.
Brad Hutto, who I think is challenging Lindsey Graham.
He did last time.
The party put him forward to talk to us about removing the flag.
Right.
And he was very careful in his language. This was on Saturday.
Yep.
He talked a lot about heritage and how his grandfather and great-great-grandfather revered the flag and were part of the war, et cetera, et cetera. But he understood that it probably had to come down. And he said that when we come into session in January, it's probably something we'll talk about, along with mental health and guns and all these other issues. No sense of urgency. My, oh my, what difference a couple of days make, because today there's a special session in South Carolina to discuss this flag. But the fact that one of the leading Democrats on this issue, apparently, who called for its removal a year ago and so on and so forth, was couching it in this very careful language, I think says to me that the politics of South Carolina on this are still very dicey. And just because we've seen waves on the national level doesn't necessarily mean that there's going to be the 2/3 vote necessary to take this flag down, or even to repeal the law that requires the 2/3 vote and just to take it down with a majority.
I think the most recent polls in South Carolina show that a majority of white people have no problem with the flag.
It was about 73% according to a 2014 poll.
Yeah. But I think that there was like 20-something% of African Americans
who also support
keeping the flag up. So it's
which I don't get that, but
I don't get that at all.
Yeah,
but like it's a good point to bring up, because it's such a weird and complicated area in terms of race and politics in South Carolina, that where we sit in Washington D.C. or where someone sits in anywhere outside of the South, they have a hard time seeing that. I think that it's a harder battle than a lot of people realize.
There is a World War I memorial in Greenville, South Carolina. Is that right?
Maybe.
Green something.
That's
anyway,
I try not to go to the
on this World War I memorial, the names of the African American soldiers and the white soldiers who died, the South Carolinians who died, are segregated in separate parts. And so the town went ahead and bought a new plaque that integrated the names and simply listed them in alphabetical order. But to do so, they needed a vote for the General Assembly to put it up. They couldn't get the vote in the General Assembly to integrate a World War I memorial plaque in a town in South Carolina, because opponents feared that this would lead and create a slippery slope to taking down the Confederate flag that flies in front of the Capitol.
Slippery slope of honoring people who die for your country.
Wow.
Astonishing. World War I memorial. They couldn't integrate a World War I memorial.
That's crazy.
Do we have any World War I veterans left? That's the sad part.
Yeah, right.
We've got Jesse from Miami, Florida on the phone. Hey, Jesse, how's it going this morning?
Hey, hi, Jimmy. A very serious topic. I called, I said, what would happen if they don't take down the flag? We all know what happened when the church was bombed with the 4 girls. It was a lot of race riots for the first time in this country. We got lessons learned. Now, let's update it. The South is a lot smarter. I don't think they will be fooled twice about who's being oppressed these days. I jump into the next topic. The new Confederate flag, I would say, is the Republican Party picture of the stars turned downward. Anybody that support that, support oppression, whether you polka dot or whatever. So I'll leave it at that. What's your comment?
I don't know anything about the latter thing that you were talking about, especially the polka dot part.
Yeah, you lost me there.
Right, but listen, let's go back to 1961 when the Democrats who controlled the House and the Senate in South Carolina, Southern Democrats, Dixiecrats, who eventually all became Republicans or died, passed a concurrent resolution. And that concurrent resolution was not allowed to be vetoed by the sitting governor, who happened to be Fritz Hollings, a Democrat, who went on to become the senator from South Carolina for 33 years, who had a long history of opposition to the Confederate flag. And that flag went up, and it stayed there. So both parties have a problem when it comes to this issue. Now, the Democrats' problem with this issue is way in the past. The Republicans' problem with this issue is front and center today, and they have to address it. And Nikki Haley has done that. And the Mississippi Speaker of the House is doing that. Now the question becomes, and Igor, you just talked about this, if they can't even get a World War I plaque up in Greenville, South Carolina to integrate the black South Carolinians who fought and died for their country in World War I and the white South Carolinians who fought and died for their country in World War I, to put all of that into one plaque, because the General Assembly in South Carolina would not let them do this, then the question is, do they have the 2/3 of the chamber, of the votes in each chamber, in the House and the Senate in South Carolina, to remove this flag? I think history is on our side here. But this is South Carolina, a place that we know something about, Peter. And Igor, you were just there. And, I'll ask this question. If the video of that little mongrel that killed those 9 innocent people in a church of God, if that video, and all that video footage and the web footage, if we didn't know about that, if he had not had on the front of his car the Sons of Confederate Veterans, vanity plate, if none of that had happened, would we be where we are today? Would Nikki Haley have said what she said? Would we be having the conversation about taking the flag down? I'm willing to bet we would not be having that conversation.
Yeah, I think if there wasn't a clear connection between the flag and this shooting,
yes,
we would just sweep it under the rug and say he's a lunatic and we need to reform mental health in this country,
right,
and not even touch the race issue, because it's difficult. It leads to some very frank admissions about who we are, how far we've come or haven't come.
Right.
And those are conversations people don't want to have.
Look at how hard people tried to make this not about racism before we found it written out in plain English that this was, in fact, about racism. Before they ever captured the shooter, the media was wondering about his mental stability and his mental health.
Which, of course, just to note, never happens when the shooter is Muslim. When the shooter is Muslim.
No, that's right.
But in this case.
Yeah, bring out the tanks, bring out the armored cars, blah, blah, blah,
Look
blah,
at
blah.
how hard Fox News twisted themselves into pretzels trying to make this about religion and not about race.
Or when the shooter is black, I should say, for that matter. When the shooter is black, what's happening in the black community? Why aren't they working? Why are they just so lazy? This is a white guy, and we immediately go to individual, lone wolf, mental problem, not anything general or systemic for us to worry about.
I think you're onto something. I think that if he hadn't spelled it out in this way, we wouldn't be where we are.
Absolutely.
And coming from the Rust Belt, we have Bernie from Big Rapids, Michigan. Good morning, Bernie.
Actually, it's Murney. I'm female.
What did I say? Did I say Murney? Good morning. I'm Southern. I probably said it right. You just didn't know that.
Murney.
Right.
Good morning. Thanks for taking my call. I just wanted to make the point. I have a nephew down in the Charleston area right now that's doing reporting. And I had a phone call with his mom earlier this morning, and she told me that he said that in interviewing, he said he must have had a couple of dozen people. He wanted kind of like the for and against bringing the flag down. And he said of a couple of dozen people that even though they were proclaiming it was about honoring their heritage and the people that gave their lives in the war and all that sort of stuff, none of them were willing to go on camera.
Yeah, I couldn't find I was just in South Carolina, Murney. I couldn't find a single person to defend the flag for me on record. Not a single one would go. And if you read all the articles about it, even in the local press, you don't see anyone quoted in defense, except for the concerned citizens. What is it? The conservative concerned citizens, or whatever that group. They're the ones who inspired this guy to and were kind of prominently featured on his website.
Right.
They're the ones who are defending the flag, but nobody else would go on record for me, or I guess for your nephew or son, nephew to talk about it. Absolutely, and that again speaks to the changing climate on the issue.
It's almost as if we have now entered into a space where it's a race closet. We are. Listen, it took me 25 years to come out of the closet to talk about who I wanted to marry. which, by the way, you can do that in South Carolina, right? I mean, it's astonishing. The flag is flying at the Capitol right now, and you can get married if you're gay in South Carolina. Whoever would have thunk it? And maybe that flag will actually come down, but it's a race issue of you're going into. Confederates have to go back into the closet. Someone tweeted yesterday, South Carolina just seceded from the Confederacy. Now, that is a powerful, powerful statement because South Carolina started the Confederacy. I went to the Citadel, which is a military college in Charleston. Most people think that the Civil War began in April of 1861. It actually began in December of 1860 when Citadel cadets fired on a Union supply ship coming in to resupply Fort Sumter, which at that time was held by the federal government. And so because they did that, they ran out of supplies, and the Confederates took over Fort Sumter. So there's a legacy here, right? Again, something I'm proud of, but something you learn from. And so there's a closet here, and we have to think about that, and we need to sort of salivate on that a little bit. And we're going to go to break, and you think about that. We'll be right back.
This is the Bill Press Show.
Tune into Free Speech TV for Democracy Now!, a national, independent, award-winning news program bringing you people and perspectives rarely seen on corporate media.
I'm the retired bishop with the Episcopal Church as the bishop for all chaplains in federal service. I read that there was a group of people that represented a sense of injustice that I had. We'd lost Zuccotti. I mean, there was a kind of a hope that maybe Trinity Church would be gracious and give refuge. We picked this day where we would gather and demonstrate that Trinity was closing its ears to what was happening. We marched around the block, and I realized that, my goodness, they're carrying a ladder. And I thought, well, this is the moment. You could feel a spiritual presence. You could feel a certain something. And then the cops came in. It got brutal.
I'm with you right here. Robin, I'm here.
The church needed, in this moment in history, to stand alongside of these protesters. The truth of Christ is found in the pews, is found in the institutional church, but it is also found on the streets. It's found in the honesty and the integrity, the insistence of people that you find in Occupy Wall Street.
Tune in to Gay USA with hosts Ann Northrup and Andy Hum for in-depth coverage of lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender news. Watch Gay USA every week, only on Free Speech TV.
You wouldn't let money just blow out of your house. So when your AC or heater is on, make sure the doors, windows, and fireplace flue are shut tight. If you're headed out, turn down the AC or lower the heat by 10 degrees. And always keep your water heater set at 120. A little bit of common sense goes a long way. Get more great tips at energysaver.gov.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. but it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, she's putting them in the same basket again. It's like, hello, that's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
The average text takes your eyes off the road for nearly 5 seconds. At highway speeds, that's enough time to travel the length of a football field. Stop the texts, stop the wrecks.
This is the Bill Press Show.
And it's Jimmy Williams, and we are back. You can call us at 866-55-PRESS, 866-55-PRESS, and we welcome your calls. It has been one heck of a morning talking about interesting things like Republicans asking for the Confederate flag to be taken down. Whoever would have thunk it? Igor Volsky is with me from Think Progress, and you can follow him on Twitter at Igor Volsky and thinkprogress.org as well. So, Alicia, I think we've got some sound. Governor Haley brought up something interesting. She tried to literally thread the needle between heritage, not hate, whatever, blah. Pop that for us, because this reminds me of something, and I want to go into this for a second here.
The hate-filled murderer who massacred our brothers and sisters in Charleston has a sick and twisted view of the flag. In no way does he reflect the people in our state who respect and in many ways revere it.
A sick and twisted view versus many who respect and revere. Igor, I'm confused. I'm perplexed. I am disemboweled per se, because I don't understand something. I don't know that this kid was crazy. I don't know that he was sick and twisted. I think he was just a hater. I think he is a hater. He told the FBI he wanted to start a war on race. He admitted that. He said, I almost didn't shoot them because they were nice. They were nice. That's not cray-cray. That's hate.
Yeah, pure hate.
And pure hate. It is the purest form of hate out there. It should be like a narcotic almost. And what I'm fascinated by is there are hate groups out there. The South Carolina League of the South. I don't even, isn't that's like the Jimmy Williams of the Jimmy Williams of the Jimmy Williams. It sounds slightly redundant. And they have a part of their website, Secession Hill. How nice. The Council of Conservative Citizens, Earl Holt III. Who is this guy? These are things that we need to talk about, but I'm concerned that the intersection of politics and race hating needs to be addressed here. We'll be back in just a moment.
This is the Bill Press Show.
I have run these canyons for 6 million years. I have traveled from the Rocky Mountains to the deserts, through scorching heat and freezing cold, from the land of the dinosaurs to fields of food.
I lend my hand to 7 states, 2 countries, 9 national parks,
and 36 million people across an arid West.
I am not the strongest or the largest, but I am the hardest working.
people love me.
My playfulness.
My beauty.
My power.
My life. But I don't think I can offer any more.
I am tired.
I am tired.
Tapped.
And tied. Of the hundreds of major rivers in the world, I am one of the few who no longer kisses the sea.
Battles to harness my soul have been won and lost. Use me wisely, and I will sustain you.
Use me like you have, and I will break. My name
is
Red. The Grand River Red. The American Nile.
The Canyon Maker. I am the Colorado River.
And I am the most endangered river in America.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. But it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello? That's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
The most valuable morning radio show, according to The Nation magazine. This is The Bill Press Show.
And it's Jimmy Williams, and we are back, and we have been having, Peter, a very, very heavy conversation about a lot of very, very heavy things. I think what we need now is a little bit of uplifting.
Yeah, please.
Because honestly, I'm a bit down about, I'm happy about what's happening in South Carolina. I'm just down about why it had to happen. So instead, let's talk about something cool called Shine On Girls, shineongirls.org. And I think we have Tara Halley on the line. Tara, are you with us this morning?
Yes, I am. Hi.
It is so good to hear your voice. Please, Tara, we are begging you, uplift us, please. Give us something on a Tuesday morning at 7:30 to talk about other than Confederate flags and race relations and Debbie Downer, things like that. What are you guys doing over at Shine On Girls? I think it's cool stuff.
Yeah, it's super fun. So Shine for Girls is a curriculum-based program that was started at MIT originally by Kiran Sinha. And in Shine, we're aiming to heighten girls' confidence in their math skills. And the way we do this is by incorporating dance with math. And people always ask, how does the math improve with the dance? And my example is always, they ask you to memorize the periodic table 100 times, and you can never do it. But the second that High School Musical dance-along comes on, you'll remember it for the rest of your life.
Wow.
So by incorporating kinesthetic learning in these girls' math skills, we really see an improvement overall in their confidence with math as a subject and in their skills in general.
So you're talking about a bunch of stuff I know nothing about. I know nothing about girls because I'm gay. And I know nothing about math because I was an English lit major. So you're going to have to just walk me through this, okay? Because I can't even count. It's bad. Maybe I need to come do this thing with you guys. I think that'd be a lot of fun. Although I will tell you, I can't dance. I'm really just at a loss here. I can't dance. I don't really like girls. And I can't add. But maybe you could help me. I mean, I don't know. So tell me a little bit about you, Tara. You're a rising senior?
Yes.
And where are you in school?
I'm at school at Robinson Secondary in Fairfax, Virginia.
I've heard of that. I've heard of Fairfax, Virginia. It's a beautiful place. And give me sort of tell me why you love this. I need to understand why it is that this is something that makes you, when you wake up in the morning, this is something that you want to do. Why is it that your peers would love to do this? What makes you want to get out there and do this every single day?
Well, basically, I'm a math lover, and I've danced since the age of 8. So when I heard about Shine, it seemed really like it just made sense to me. And my family's always been involved in a lot of community service, and I'd never really found my niche in that. Mm-hmm. But when I heard of Shine, it was something that I was kind of just like, it was like a light bulb went off in my head, and I was like, wow, I need to be involved in this. And now that I am, it's so easy for me to do because nothing feels like a chore with it. It doesn't feel like a job. It doesn't feel like anything. It feels like I'm doing what I love and spreading my passion with others. So it's something that I'm actually honored to be a part of.
And I think that's key here is that it's listen, I got to tell you, if I had to wake up when I was a kid, when I was your age, and I woke up in the morning and I'd be like, I do not want to go to swim practice, or I do not want to go play tennis because I played tennis when I was a kid. I don't want to, no, because that would be, I'd be like, no, please don't make me go do it. But you want to get up and do this. I mean, you want to get up and dance and do math. That's crazy. You know that, right?
Yes.
Okay. I just want to make sure that you know that this is freaking me out a little bit for lots of different reasons.
Bottle some of that up.
Yeah. Is there a way we can can distribute it out? We'll find a distributor for this. Tell me about the girls that you were doing this with. I mean, is this what age ranges are we talking about here? It's. I mean, how many hours a week do you do this? Tell me tell me about your commitment to this and the peers around you, your girlfriends around you that are doing this. What's it like for them, and who are they?
So basically, I couldn't tell you how many hours I put into it because I don't really keep track. It's an integral part of my life now, and it's not something I really put hours on because I don't really know. I'm thinking about it 24/7. It's always in the back of my head when I see things. I'm like, oh, that would be great for Shine. It's just something. It's like it's become a lifestyle for me. So I couldn't really tell you how many hours I put into it. But when we do hold the programs, it's a 2.5-hour session each week, and that's where the mentors come in. All the mentors are putting a lot of time into it elsewhere, just as I am, and they're checking on girls' homework, they're prepping lesson plans, they're doing all of that beforehand and coming so it's ready for all the girls. And the girls that we are catering to specifically are middle school girls, and in Fairfax County, middle school is grades 7 and 8, and in Boston, where it was originally started, middle school is 6, 7, 8. Mm-hmm. So we've opened our program up specifically to 5th through 8th graders. So we have a little bit of elementary and a little bit of middle school, but it's that same age range of about 9 to 12.
See, that's just fantastic. I've got my niece she's now 21, but I remember when she was your age. And it was a struggle. I mean, listen, my niece I love her. She's perfect. Nothing about her is imperfect, right? Because this is how you feel about your relatives. But when she was your age, it was a struggle, I think, for my brother and my sister-in-law to figure out exactly what it is that she wanted to go do. And then finally one day they figured it out because she came to them and she said, I want to play soccer. And so, boom, guess what? All of a sudden, my brother and sister-in-law were literally in the car every weekend. And then, by the way, then it transferred to her little brother who just graduated from high school and is now going on a soccer scholarship to college. But this stuff is infectious. When you figure out what it is that you love, and you just said it, an integral part of your life, and that's the key here, right? And if, it really you can figure that out, Tara, and listen, if my niece can figure that out, I think that's the key here. And when you've got your peers around you, and I mean, are you a mentor to any of the younger girls? Tell me, what's that sort of relationship factor like? I mean, how long? Let me ask. Let's back up. How long have you been doing Shine?
I have only been doing Shine for the past year. We started the program in about October, but I had been working with Kieran since, I'd say, August.
Mm-hmm.
So it's going to be a year in August that I've been working with the program. And the way the mentoring works is that, yes, there's mentors in the session specifically. So we break up into groups with the girls based on their levels of mathematic ability.
Mm-hmm.
And we have one mentor per group. It's about 3 to 4 girls, and 45 minutes of each of our weekly sessions are based solely on the material that Kieran has created in the curriculum. And they go through that week, and maybe it's decimals and fractions, maybe it's shapes, maybe you're doing geometry. I'm not sure what you want to talk about specifically, but each week has an individual topic, and that's where we see the mentoring. But not only there, this session specifically in May, I have my favorite little girl. Her name is Isabella. She's an 8th grader, and she was the only 8th grader in the session. And so she was definitely the older, and she's more mature for her age in that too. And it was her second time going through the program. And so when we had Isabella there, we would almost train her to be a mentor. And that's what I feel like Shine is becoming. It's not only mentoring the young ones, but mentoring the young ones to be a mentor when they're older. And Kieran has been a mentor for me. So we're really creating a system of women in STEM that when we grow up and we're in the workforce, like, we can look to each other. So that's, I think, another important part of Shine.
You just scared the death out of me, Tara. I just want you to know that, because you're a rising senior going into, this is your summer break. You're a rising senior in high school, and you just said something about the workforce. I just want you to realize what you've done, right? This is, you're way ahead. When I was your age, I'm like, work? No. There will be none of that crazy stuff. There will be no working for Jimmy Williams. Well, here we are at 7:40 in the morning working, of course. 35 states Shine for Girls is in. I think that's fantastic. It's a wonderful mentoring program, and you are going to participate in the coming year, I assume, as well, correct?
Yes.
That's fantastic. And how do you think Shine for Girls and what Kieran's doing how is that going to prepare you for the next thing in your life, whether that be college or like I just said, the workforce? How is that going to help you walk into the next door of what you do? Because next June, you're going to graduate from high school. That's a big deal, by the way. And when you do that, you're going to have these skills. How's it going to help you?
I'm definitely planning on going to college. And in college, I see myself entering not the workforce. I keep saying that word, but not the workforce. I see myself entering into college with these skills, in that I hope to grow on them in college, and I want to major in something that has to do with Shine. So I'm looking to major in math or economics. So incorporating business and math is something that I've always wanted to do. So if I can find a way to do that, I think that's what I'm going to find my passion in. And during college, I plan to bring Shine to wherever I'm going and start a program there so that I can continue to have this with me wherever I go. I think that's just beyond fabulous. And look, Tara, you are an inspiration, not just to your peers, but you're an inspiration to me. I think what Kieran's doing, I think is fantastic. And listen, we are thrilled to have you on, and I don't know if you're going to go back to sleep now, but something tells me that you're not. Yeah. Tara, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. Shineforgirls.org. Thank you, Tara. Thank you so much. Have a great day, and we will be right back in just a moment.
This is the Bill Press Show.
Right now, big banking, software, pharmaceutical, and tobacco corporations are lobbying governments from 12 countries to negotiate the dirtiest deal you've never heard of. There's a reason you haven't heard of the TPP or Trans-Pacific Partnership. There are some major corporations and government officials that don't want you to know what's in the deal. For one, our food safety standards, environmental protections, and local labor laws could all be threatened under the TPP. We could all be forced to pay significantly more for the medicines we need. And you could be fined or even sent to jail for downloading copyrighted content on the internet. How will they know if you do it? Because your internet service providers could be required to watch your online activity. But that's not the scariest part. The TPP gives corporations the power to sue our government in secret tribunals over any law or regulation they claim affects their expected future profits. Don't believe it? It's already happening. Recently, after our government said an American pharma corporation's drug price-raising patents were not legit, the firm sued Canadian taxpayers for a staggering $500 million. And a U.S. fracking company sued us when the Quebec government put a moratorium on shale gas development to study its impacts. These deals will stop us from making our own common sense laws for fear of lawsuits. Thankfully, not everyone is willing to sign on the dotted line just yet. In fact, most government officials still have no idea what they're even signing on to, for good reason. In the U.S., Democrats and Republicans alike are uniting to oppose a fast tracking of the TPP, demanding open debates and negotiations instead. Elected officials in Canada and everywhere should be doing this, and it's our job to make sure they start showing some backbone. Here's the deal. Without a strong public outcry, politicians will only hear the concerns of multinational corporations. And once the TPP is signed, it's here forever. There's no expiration date and no separation clause. This dirty deal has been deliberately branded as a free trade agreement. It is anything but free for people like you and me. And it's not really about trade. It could cost us our internet freedom, labor rights, access to affordable medicine, the safety of our food, and protections that keep our water and air clean. Nobody wants to be struck with a backroom deal we don't want and never voted for. Find out more, speak up, and spread the word.
Seen on Free Speech TV and online on TawkrTV. This is the Bill Press Show.
And we are back. What an inspiration. I mean, Shine for Girls is good stuff. And thank goodness that there are people like here in Cena that are coming out here doing and coming up. How you take dance and how you take math and put them together and make girls do this and be interested in this and wake up in the morning at 7:30 when you're 17 and go on national radio and talk about that. That's sheer power. That is the good of humanity, and I think we need lots more of that in this world. So
I feel wholly inadequate after talking.
Well, you look a little inadequate right now.
That's par for the course.
You haven't showered in 3 days. But that's a separate issue. It's no big deal. Whatever. Not to. All right. So let's go back down the wormhole, ladies and gentlemen. There seems to be this massive amount of anger at the President of the United States for saying something. He said the N-word. When he was on with Mark Maron the other day, and Mark Maron, who's a comedian, by the way, and then has this great podcast out of his garage that tons of people listen to. I listen to it now as well. And the president was talking about race, and he used you know what, Lisa, let's just play the clip because I think this is important here.
Racism, we are not cured of, clearly. And it's not just a matter of it not being polite to say in public. That's not the measure of whether racism still exists or not. It's not just a matter of overt discrimination. Societies don't overnight completely erase everything that happened 200 to 300 years prior.
This is a fascinating thing. When I was a kid, and Peter, you and I grew up in the same place, and My father taught me that word was okay.
Yeah.
It was, he used that word. He used that word when Bertha was around, who was our nanny.
Oh, man.
And she didn't even bat an eye. I'm sure she probably wanted to, blow his brains out. But, I mean, the bottom line is that it was a normal word.
Yeah, no, in my household, my grandmother used that word like a comma.
Yeah.
She used it constantly.
Yeah.
It's certainly not the first time I've heard that word by any stretch.
And so the president addresses this head on in an interview with Mark Maron, and talks about it within the context of it being used against a group of people, by a group of people. And yet Fox and right-wing Twitter and Facebook and social media is going bonkers because the president said it. I had a friend of mine that I grew up with down in South Carolina who said, he put this on Facebook, he said, if George W. Bush had said that, you'd be up in arms. My response back was, if George W. Bush had ever actually had the balls to actually have a conversation about race and had used the N-word just exactly as President Obama had done, I would have praised him to the rooftops.
Yeah.
But George Bush never had that conversation.
Right.
And he was never courageous enough to actually say what the president said. Because, again, had he done that, I think we would have all been, whoa, 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 George W. Bush, a Republican, is actually having a conversation about race.
Listen to what President Obama is saying in the interview, right? It's very important for people to realize that just because you don't say the N-word or you know somebody who doesn't say the dreaded N-word, that you're okay. There are people who think that I'm not racist, I've never used that word. Or he's not racist, he would never call anybody the N-word. And that's hardly the point of racism in today's culture and society. It's a point that the president is trying to drive home. We all talk about how we want to have these conversations about race. And the idea that we can't acknowledge this for what it is so childish. This is one of the most childish things I've ever seen the media actually latch onto.
Because there's nothing
insane.
else for them to talk about.
Yeah, I guess. But, it's such a good interview, by the way. I listened to Mark Maron. I think he's a pretty good interviewer. I think the president walked into this interview with the right mindset of how Mark Maron does his show. Because Maron didn't get a ton of questions in, but the president was free-flowing and just, you listened to it, he just talked extensively about some of his flaws, some of the frustrations he has. It's really, really candid. And when you're talking about race on such a level as to, confront it head on and figure out how we have a real conversation about it, and you just ignore that aspect of it, it's silly.
There's speaking of presidents or presidential wannabes talking about race. Donald Trump has officially filed to run for president of the United States.
Hey, all right.
Yeah.
Woohoo! Yeah, this is really happening, huh?
It only took him a week, but that's a separate issue. And so now he's going to have to release all these financial disclosure forms, blah 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 blah. But when he announced, I actually said that it was one of the most racist speeches I had ever heard in my entire life. And people lit me up. They're like, well, he didn't use the N-word or blah, blah, blah. No, he did everything but that. When you say Mexicans are going to come in and rape, really? Really? This is what we're having a conversation about. And by the way, remember when President Obama did the 3 YouTube interviews and the right-wing media lit him up? I mean, Glozell interviewed the President of the United States in the White House because this is a new form of media, and that was a story. This is not a story, folks, because the President of the United States got elected twice by using social media. And so now he's doing something interesting with social media, which is he's using it to get out his message and his policy and his politics. And I would suggest something to the Republicans in the right wing. You might want to start using social media. It's effective.
Seems that way.
It seems that way. And we'll be right back, folks. Thank you for joining us.
This is the Bill Press Show.
At Earth Justice, we defend the environment in the courtroom. Join our fight. When you take a seat, you take a stand. Earth Justice, because the earth needs a good lawyer.
Tune in to Gay USA with hosts Ann Northrup and Andy Hum for in-depth coverage of lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender news. Watch Gay USA every week, only on Free Speech TV.
A few years ago, plastic bag waste in our city came to a tipping point. It was clear. We had a bag problem. My department was tasked to reduce plastic bag consumption. We needed to come up with ways to change human behavior. So we asked ourselves,
would you like it back?
What do people really hate?
Yep.
Getting punched in the stomach. Preliminary studies showed that the consequences weren't severe enough to warrant behavioral change.
Actually, can I get that double bagged?
So we thought, what do people hate more than getting punched in the stomach? Kissing Helga.
Big boy.
People didn't find her so offensive after all, so we had to get creative.
How many bags? Okay, now, pour this ice water down your pants.
We tried everything.
Eat this rat. Defuse this bomb.
Even fighting your clone. After blowing through millions of dollars of government funds on research, I came up with a brilliant idea.
Why don't we just charge 5 cents per bag?
That's a stupid idea.
Would you like a bag?
Yes.
5 cents a bag.
5 cents? 5 cents? Do I still have the option of getting punched?
Honestly, I don't know how everyone else missed it.
Why don't you just get a reusable bag?
This is the Bill Press Show.
And it's Jimmy Williams, and we are back. We've only got about a minute here. And speaking of people who want to be president of the United States, Ted Cruz, also known as Ted Crew, which is cray-cray. He apparently went to a... Peter helped me with this, a Celebrate the Second Amendment event. The Second Amendment says you can have a gun. Mm-hmm. And he got... there are crazy pictures here of him. I don't understand. Listen, if you go to a Second Amendment, Celebrate the Second Amendment event, and people take pictures of you, and you have pictures guns pointed at your head, et cetera, and you want to be president of the United States, does that disqualify you?
Yeah, I mean, look, there's gun imagery everywhere at an event like that. What do you expect?
I just don't get it. But maybe I don't have to.
Yeah,
that's what it is. So, I mean, I'm not running for president.
This is the Bill Press Show.
What they told us we were doing was going to rid the state of frivolous lawsuits. So we said, okay, let's vote for this.
Leading up to the 2003 effort in Texas, the insurance companies primarily, but also the medical industry, started this drumbeat. They were alleging that medical malpractice lawsuits were soaring and the cost of healthcare was going way up. They barraged the citizens of Texas with these frightening, scary messages that we were in some sort of crisis. But the reality was that simply wasn't true.
One of the things I think the public doesn't fully understand is that lawsuits are about a lot more than just seeking compensation for an individual plaintiff. By giving damages to the individual, the jury is sending a message about safety to the doctors, the nurses, the hospital. Please change your ways. Make healthcare safer to protect all of us.
Bill and Kelly Putnam experienced a nightmare scenario. They're in the nursing home with their father. The nurse administers medication improperly. As a result, he started to choke on the medication, and Kelly was forced to provide CPR on her father while staff at the nursing home did nothing.
I was probably 6 inches away from my dad's eyes. He's no longer thrashing, he's no longer moving.
And so they took him to the hospital, they worked on him, cause of death, aspiration. Texas Board of Nursing ruled that the nurse not only did what we said she did, but she also said that the facility had her destroy the medical records for that day and create a new version. I decided to give a lawyer friend a call. I went through probably 10, maybe more. All of them I got the same letter back stating that because of tort reform, we cannot afford to litigate these types of cases.
What the 2003 restrictions did was make it economically unfeasible for most attorneys to take most medical malpractice cases. It's a cynical attempt to make it harder for people to go to court by making it harder for them to get representation.
I do remember when Patricia Whitman first contacted me, because as a cardiologist, I was pretty outraged when I looked at the medical records.
Patricia Whitman visited the emergency room complaining of chest pains. They look at her EKG. Doctor says, no, you've got indigestion, go home. The symptoms persist. Next day she goes in, sees a different physician. She's been having a heart attack.
Anyone looking at this EKG in a patient with chest pain has to consider that that patient is having an acute heart attack until proven otherwise. All of these abnormalities were essentially ignored, and a diagnosis of acid reflux was made in Patricia Whitman's case, and that was the wrong diagnosis.
The doctor came in and he said that I had substantial permanent heart damage and that I was, quote unquote, 100% disabled. Prior to the heart attack, I had a 3,500 square foot home that I took care of, and I was on my feet 8 hours a day going to cosmetology school. Then I would come home and cook for my kids and do whatever else needed to be done. I did it all. After the heart attack, I couldn't keep up with the house. I couldn't pay the mortgage. My life has changed a lot. I will never be able to do what I used to do. I have to depend on 5 heart medications that I have to take every day in order to survive. This is a letter from one attorney. It would be difficult to prove that the ER physician's conduct rose to the level of gross negligence. No attorney would take my case.
Tort reform involved a specific passage of language that said that a simple negligence standard no longer applied to emergency room care in Texas. The new standard was a gross negligence standard called willful and wanton negligence.
You have to prove in court that that doctor saw me walk through the door and said, that's my next victim. And of course that doesn't happen. And so people like Patricia Whitman, who find themselves in the emergency room and are misdiagnosed or harmed, face almost no ability for accountability. If you look back and you break down the arguments made by the insurance companies and medical industry about the cost, quality, access of healthcare in Texas, by every metric, we're worse off today than we were 10 years ago. It has made life better and easier for a small group of corporate interests at the expense of the rest of us.
These corporations, they have no fear because they know that they're not going to be held responsible. It shouldn't be about money. But unfortunately, that's the only language these people speak. That's why we're out protesting.
we will stand out on the street in front of the facility with signs that state what happened and make sure that they understand that we're not going to go away and that what they did was wrong.
We must restore meaningful accountability in this state so that another family does not go through the same nightmare that they've been through. If enough people in the public say enough is enough, then politicians have to think twice. We're never going to be able to compete with the special interests in terms of campaign contributions and money. Where we have to compete with them is in boots on the ground. The more people that rise up and say, we want our rights back, then they have to think about it. And once we've made them think about it, then half the battle is won.
Broadcasting around the nation, on your radio, on your TV, and online. This is The Bill Press Show.
And this is Jimmy Williams, and we are back. I'm guest hosting today for Bill Press, who is not here, unfortunately. You can call in your questions, 866-55-PRESS, 866-55-PRESS. You can also tweet us at BP Show. And I am joined at this point in time, we are joined at this point in time by one of my heroes, a modern-day American hero, and his name is Jim Obergefell. He is the lead plaintiff in the marriage equality case that is still sitting at the Supreme Court of the United States as we speak. And those justices, those 9 men and women, Jim, they are making us wait. It is killing us. How are you this morning?
I'm doing well, Jimmy. Thanks. I'm nervous. I'm excited. I'm tired. I'm a lot of things.
You think? You've only been doing this how long now, my friend?
A lot on your plate, man.
Yeah. This is good stuff, though. I mean, we, I had the chance to sit down with you and talk to you about your marriage to your late husband, about what this entire journey has meant for you. Here we are. We're at the river's edge, my friend. We're waiting for the Supreme Court to tell us whether or not your marriage was actually legitimate or not, and that's what this boils down to, doesn't it?
Absolutely. It boils down to whether our 20-year relationship existed and matters, and whether or not I can rest easy knowing that John's final record as a person will always be accurate.
And let's get down to the sort of details on this and walk us through. I mean, this case is about marriage equality, but this case is about whether or not the state of Ohio has to do what with regard to John's legacy.
Right. So when we married because of the Windsor decision and knowing that we could be recognized by the federal government. And we never thought about the state of Ohio. You know, we were excited to marry, and we knew Ohio had that amendment, but that's kind of an amorphous thing. You don't really understand what that really means until you come up against things. So the reason we filed suit was learning that when John would die, his death certificate would be filled out incorrectly by the state of Ohio. They would say that he was unmarried at the time of death, and my name would not be listed as his surviving spouse. And that broke our hearts and made us mad.
So what we're talking about here is an issue of fundamental equality. Nothing more, nothing less. The fact that the man that you loved, the man that you married, that you went back to your home state where you had spent a massive amount of time growing together as a couple. He gets this awful disease, and you guys prepare for this. You mentally and physically and morally prepare for this, and then the state decides they're going to rip that away from you. And what I think is important here is that I think the reason that marriage equality has played, the reason it has risen from a favorable versus an unfavorable position in the polls is because we are talking about an issue of fundamental equality. Whether or not Jim Obergefell's name, your name, can be on your husband's death certificate. whether you can see him in the hospital, whether you can, the basics, the very basics of a relationship, of humanity. And that's what this is all about, isn't it, really?
Oh, absolutely. And, for John and me, there was something else that, wouldn't necessarily apply to a lot of people, but I think it helps illustrate just what we're fighting for. John's grandparents, when they bought their family cemetery plot, they added a provision that only direct descendants and their legally married spouses could be buried or memorialized on that plot. So without recognition by the state of Ohio of our marriage and recognizing me as John's surviving spouse, at the time I die, John and I could not be memorialized together on that family plot. Even though we've been together 20 years in life, we would not be able to be memorialized together in death.
So the Supreme Court this week, we think, I'm sure, they're going to come up with a decision. Justice Kennedy, who has written the 3 major LGBTQ decisions in the past, and we're not going to know until they announce it. And we thought they were going to announce it on Monday. I know you were at the court. You were waiting there patiently. I saw the pictures on Facebook. You look fantastic, by the way.
Thank you.
And we just don't know. It's going to be, they have to do it before they leave. And I think there's 7 cases that are still pending that they have not issued writs on. And so
Correct.
This one is going to be huge because ultimately I think you can get married in a huge number of states at this point in time. But the Supreme Court has to settle this once and for all. And let's assume that they do the right thing. Let's assume Justice Kennedy, who again has been building these cases along and along for the last 15, 20 years, let's assume he does the right thing. What's the next step for Jim Obergefell? What is it about Jim and John that you want America to know, again, assuming the court does the right moral thing here?
Well, I wish I had a great answer or a really complete answer on what comes next. I honestly don't know, Jimmy. It's one of those things where I've been so caught up in this and concentrating on this that I haven't really thought much beyond getting that decision. I mean, the one thing I do know is I've discovered that this issue of equality is much too important to me for this to be the end. Even if we get marriage equality, we're still not fully equal citizens of the United States. I mean, in too many states, even with marriage equality, if someone gets married, they can then be fired from their job because they got married. They can be kicked out of their apartment. So for me, when I think about what comes next, it's that I feel a commitment and I feel obligated to continue fighting in my husband's name, but for everyone out there who deserves to be treated equally. So that's about all I can think of right now is I'm going to be in this fight for the long term and doing everything I can.
I think you bring up a very important point, which is you can get married in a bunch of states in the United States, right? But if you go on your honeymoon, you can be fired for doing it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Now, that's astonishing. You can lose your job because you went on your gay honeymoon, right? I mean, that's
correct.
This is you said the word fundamental fairness. The word's fundamental fairness. This is the key here. This is the next great civil rights debate that we have. Again, assuming the court does the right thing.
Right. Absolutely. You shouldn't lose your job because you put a picture of your wedding day up on your desk at work. And unfortunately, that can happen and does happen.
And I think that's the testament to John's legacy, to your fight for equality on behalf of a nation that needs it, that wants it. I can say this. When you and I were kids, if you had said to me, hey, one day you're going to be able to marry the man you love, I would have said, you're crazy. I would have said, there's no way that's going to happen. But I'm also the same kid that grew up, and we've been talking about this the last 2 hours, in South Carolina, where they're probably going to take down the Confederate flag. Who knew that was going to happen?
Right.
And so wonders never cease. And I think that ultimately there's a correlation between these two things, isn't there? Which is people believe in fundamental fairness and in morality. And that's the beautiful thing about this young country called America. We actually believe that people should be treated the same and everyone should get the same thing. And you ought to be able to rise up no matter where you come from in the United States and do the right thing And if we are a nation of equal justice under the law, then that should apply to every single person living in this country, including you, Jim Obergefell. And so let me just say this to you. You're a hero to me. And by the way, I also saw that picture of you and Edie Windsor. That's a hero to both of us.
Oh, yeah.
She's awesome. Without her, we would not be here today. I think that's probably a true statement.
Well, absolutely. I know I wouldn't be, because it was the day her decision was announced that I had proposed to John.
Wow.
So absolutely, without her courage, I wouldn't be here.
So let's just, to Edie Windsor, let's say thank you. To you, Jim Obergefell, we say thank you. Let's pray and hope that the Supreme Court does the right thing. I think that they're going to. And then let's move on to the next fight, which is just being treated equally in housing and in jobs and in your home. And that's the key here. Jim Obergefell, we thank you. We appreciate it. And come back sometime soon.
Will do. Thanks, Jimmy, so much. I enjoyed it.
Thank you.
All right.
And we will be back in just a minute.
This is the Bill Press Show.
They called her Little Sanju. She was born in a village at the foot of the Himalayas, the smallest of 7 brothers and sisters.
My family was very poor. To get by, we raised cows and we made small things for tourists out of bamboo. But we were always hungry, and no matter how hard he tried, my father was always in debt. When I was 11, my father told me I had to go to work making carpets. I had to leave with a man who took me to the carpet factory. The broker who took me away got paid, but they never paid my father anything. I made knots from 4 in the morning until 8 at night. There was never a day off. I was always hungry. I cut my fingers while weaving and had to weave with cut fingers. My hands began to look like my grandmother's. I cried every night. I thought the rest of my life would be only this.
It takes 1 million knots to make one 8x10 rug. In the 1990s, 1 million children were enslaved making carpets in South Asia. Then a hero entered the picture. It was you. If you knew how these carpets were made, you would no longer think they were so beautiful. And if you could choose a better rug, your buying power could end child slavery in the rug industry. From that simple idea, Goodweave was born. Here's how it works. To earn the Goodweave label, companies agreed not to employ children. Goodweave makes sure by conducting surprise inspections. When children are found, Goodweave helps them.
2 years ago, a Goodweave inspector named Grona found me in the factory. When I saw him, I was scared, but Grona put his arm around me and told me it would be okay. Grona took me to Hamrogar, a home for rescued carpet kids run by Goodweave. I'm the first person in my family to ever go to school.
Today, thousands of children like Sanju have been educated and rescued by Goodweave. And because you chose the Goodweave label, 3/4 of those million children weaving carpets are now free. And Sanju, with Goodweave's support, she's able to attend her village school and live at home where she belongs. Now that's a beautiful rug that tells a beautiful story. Stand with Sanju. Insist on the Goodweave label.
The average text takes your eyes off the road for nearly 5 seconds. At highway speeds, that's enough time to travel the length of a football field. Stop the texts. Stop the wrecks.
Connect with The Bill Press Show on Twitter. Follow us at BP Show and tweet using the hashtag WatchingBP. This is The Bill Press Show.
And this is Jimmy Williams, and we are back. Thank you for joining us. You can follow us on Free Speech TV and TawkrTV, TAWKR-TV. You can also follow us on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/TawkrTV. Tweet us at BP Show and call us, please, 866-55-PRESS, 866-55-77377. Peter.
Mr. Williams, thank you for being here, man.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here. I'm glad Bill's passed out on the sofa right now. And poor Carol, she's having to pay attention to him. Actually, Bill, if it's public knowledge, Bill was just on Morning Joe talking about Rick Perry and foreign policy and all kinds of fun things. We could not hear it because we were live, but I'm sure that was a fabulous conversation.
It always is.
Because I didn't realize that Rick Perry had a foreign policy. He can't even figure out how many departments of government there are, so I don't know how the hell he's going to figure out where Libya is, but it's a separate issue. This is interesting. This is coming up. Martha Stewart Living to be acquired for $353 million.
Oh, my.
I've always wanted to be Martha Stewart. Well, kind of, sort of. But what's interesting about Martha is, remember, she went to jail.
Yeah.
She went to jail for insider trading and came out with a crocheted shawl of some sort, which was frankly horrifying. I say that as a gay man. But her company used to be valued at $1.8 billion, and now she just sold it for $353 million because that's such a cheap amount of money, right?
Yeah, I was going to say, she still made out okay.
She made out okay. Listen, Martha Stewart, love her or hate her, she has made the world look better.
Yeah.
I got to give her that, right? I mean, remember she struck the deal with Kmart? Remember that years ago? And so, she's an amazing woman. She is an amazing businesswoman. She used to be a model.
Really? I still have such a crush on Martha Stewart. I'll admit
too,
that.
and I'm gay.
Totally,
right?
I just love Martha Stewart. I know she did some bad things. She paid.
Well, she did insider trading. I mean, everyone.
Right? Yeah, exactly. I'm not all that.
I'm not saying it's a good thing. I'm just saying people do this, right? I mean, she did this. This is. Listen, if she took something, she packaged it, and she sold it.
Yeah.
And America and the world bought it. I can't think of a better way to go through life, for gosh sakes.
Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty daggum good.
I'm on board.
Speaking of packaging things and selling them to the public and them eating them blindly, let's go back and talk about this flag stuff for a second.
Yeah.
The Confederate flag, not the American flag. This is... Last Friday, I went on Alex Wagner's show on MSNBC, and she asked me if I thought that the flag would come down anytime soon. I said, I just don't see it happening. That was on Friday.
Friday of last week.
I mean, and then by Saturday, I sort of thought this through, and I saw what was happening, and I was talking to my reporter on the ground there, and then talking to family members, et cetera, and then following the social media. By Sunday, I'm like, I think I just made a mistake. And then here we are yesterday, and Nikki Haley, the Republican governor of South Carolina, demanding that the Confederate flag be taken off of State House grounds. You now have the Mississippi Speaker of the House saying that the emblem should be taken off of the flag. That's movement, folks. This is a watershed moment in civil rights in this country. Thank God. And I do thank God for that, because I lived in a home. My brother, his name is Robert Edward Lee Williams. My father named him after Robert E. Lee. When I went to the Citadel and the barracks, all 4 barracks at the Citadel, you walk through the Sally Port, which is basically the front door of your dorm. And there's a massive brass and bronze plaque up that says, Duty is the sublimest word in the English language. Dash Robert E. Lee. And by the way, Robert E. Lee was right about duty being the sublimest word in the English language. Your duty to your country, et cetera, et cetera. So this issue, my best friend growing up was a KA, a Kappa Alpha. Several of my closest friends growing up were KAs. KA was founded at the campus of Washington and Lee to honor Robert E. Lee. And so I come from a line of ancestors who fought for the Confederacy, from generals down to privates. The question is am I a Confederate today? Am I a racist today? Am I pro-slavery today? And the answer to all of those things is absolutely not, because that's not my legacy. My legacy, and this is the key here, I think this is what's important about this debate and why I think you can have conservatives and progressives and everyone else agreeing on this issue, which is our legacy is what we do for our children and for the next generation. And that's the key here. And that's why I think it's important that we as progressives should praise Nikki Haley, even if she's doing this for political reasons. We should praise her for leading the movement to get rid of this flag on State House grounds. And I am okay with that.
Yeah. You got to look, politics is a weird thing.
Of course it is.
The president was against gay marriage before he evolved on gay marriage.
So was Hillary Clinton.
Yes. These things happen. Times change for a lot of different reasons. People used to act like flip-flopping with John Kerry was such a bad thing when he was a candidate. I'm not against flip-flopping. I'm okay with the candidate evolving their point of view, even if it is politically beneficial for them, and that's the reason that they're doing it. It doesn't matter, is where I land. Nikki Haley had the opportunity to do something good and big on this flag earlier in her political career, and she didn't. But she's doing it now.
Right.
And it's at a very important and critical time for her to do something about it. We should respect that. This is a huge gamble for her.
Yeah,
I mentioned this earlier. We've seen what happens when the governor of South Carolina calls for the flag to be taken down. David Beasley was the governor, and he lost on that one singular issue.
Yes.
Because he wanted to take it down. She knows what's at stake here.
She does.
And she put it out there.
She does. Now, she's safely reelected.
Yeah, sure.
But those members of the House and the Senate in South Carolina are not.
Yeah.
They're going to have to run on how they vote on this issue, if in fact they vote, which she's going to make them vote. The governor of South Carolina is a weak governorship, but the one thing that she can do, or the governor of South Carolina can do, is they can bring the General Assembly back into session and make them vote.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's the perp walk they're all going to have to take. And by the way, they should take it. They should have taken it decades ago. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the key. We've got Ron from Elgin, Illinois on the line. Ron, good morning. How are you?
Good morning. Good, Jimmy. How are you?
I'm alive, which is good. So tell me what's going on, Ron.
Sure. I think that we should commend the governor of South Carolina. She is to be given kudos for taking a stand to get rid of a symbol of hatred and a symbol of white supremacy and get rid of it and put it in a museum and bury it. So that's my opinion.
Well, we appreciate that, and we happen to agree with you. Ron from Elgin, Illinois, thank you. We're going to take a little bit of a break and be right back.
This is the Bill Press Show.
We came here to Foster City, where we're going to watch UC Berkeley, a University of California SWAT team, do a hostage rescue scenario.
Should I put the water in there now?
Yeah, go ahead. This is like some kind of chemical agent?
Yeah. Copy, we're ready. I'm gonna get shot. I already know it, dude.
machines yelling at me.
Help me. Show your hands. Help me. Show your hands. Back away.
Gentlemen, we have a chemical. We need to pull our person out. Get these guys out of here. Pull them out. Put your hands on your face. Keep him covered.
Your head up. He's got a shotgun back there.
That's all right. Keep his hands up where we can.
Hands on your face.
Hands on your face. On your face.
Someone cover me. I got a holster up, bro.
Okay, pull him around the corner. Pick him up. Get him out of the building. Quickly. We've got this. Let's get that guy out of there. You, come towards us. Keep your hands on your face. Turn around. Face away from us. Back towards us. Quickly. Back up towards me. Quickly. Pull him out of the room.
We're exfilling, Billy.
Yes, we are exfilling.
It was actually around 92, 94. There was an attack on the chancellor at his residence, which is on campus. And we realized at the time that we didn't have any resources to deal with that kind of threat when it took place. So, and I think about 15 years before, they had some kind of semblance of a SWAT team. So they regenerated the idea of activating a SWAT team.
And then since then, you guys have kind of branched out to doing what kind of stuff?
Well, since then, we train for everything. We train for every eventuality, barricaded subjects. Like I said, most of what we do is high-risk warrants.
And it's something like it could be like a mugging kind of thing, just like on the street.
Depends.
Or
I mean, a mugging, but if it's armed, particularly.
Right, an armed mugging.
Yeah. Right. Exactly. And then obviously we're looking for training for anything else. That we might be faced with, and that's what's great about Urban Shield is we couldn't duplicate this on our own.
What the frack?
What the frack?
What the frack?
What the frack?
President Obama, are you fracking kidding me?
Reopen the EPA studies. In Texas, Wyoming, and Pennsylvania.
Fracking pollutes our oceans.
Fracking poisons our water.
Fracking makes climate change worse.
Fracking relies on toxic chemicals that cause cancer.
Ban fracking now.
Ban fracking now.
Go on. Ban it.
Ban fracking now.
Please.
The average text takes your eyes off the road for nearly 5 seconds. At highway speeds, that's enough time to travel the length of a football field. Stop the texts, stop the wrecks.
The most valuable morning radio show, according to The Nation magazine. This is The Bill Press Show.
And it's Jimmy Williams, and we are back, and we are joined by our good friend, Carl Frisch, Carl with a K, and you can follow him on Twitter at Carl Frisch, and obviously at carlfrisch.com. Please call us, 866-55-PRESS, 866-55-PRESS, or tweet us at BP Show. And Carl, good morning.
Good morning.
It is lovely to see you.
Thank you.
I'm glad you're here. Enlighten us. You've spent some time in South Kakalaki.
I have.
And Peter and I have clearly spent probably too much time.
More than I have.
Yeah,
more than I have.
Too much time.
And some stuff's going down there. What's happening down in South Carolina?
The Republican Party is caving on the flag. It seems they're having their Southern Soldier moment, if you will.
Oh my God! I'm totally tweeting that right now.
That's so great.
Keep talking so I can tweet.
I first experienced South Carolina as a young campaign aide to Senator John McCain during the notorious 2000 South Carolina Republican primaries.
Oh, yes.
When George W. Bush's campaign was telling people that John McCain had a black daughter. But you understand he was only saying that he had a black daughter to exemplify the Southern history of the Confederacy. It had nothing to do with racism.
Yeah. So Thurman-esque.
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
And not to say that McCain's campaign, that we were not doing anything equally awful. It's just that back then McCain had not his charm had not been worn off on the media. We were doing awful things too. And I say that because people need to understand just how deep the racism goes in the South Carolina Republican Party. John McCain, the liberal senator, quote-unquote liberal senator, in that presidential race. He was the liberal moderate candidate. Every piece of coverage talked about how he was relying on Democrats and independents to win the primaries, the Republican primaries. And his South Carolina campaign was run by a guy named Richard Quinn. Richard Quinn had a son in the legislature. I think his son was like 23 years old. Had been in the legislature since he was halfway through with college. And Richard Quinn had been one of the top consultants in the state to Republican statewide candidates, managing half of their races. And when I got to South Carolina after being in New Hampshire, I walk into the campaign headquarters, get my desk, and there's this door that separates what is the campaign office from Richard Quinn and Associates. This is on Gervais Street, right along
Gervais Street.
That goes right down to the Capitol.
Yep.
Across from the Clarion Hotel. And you walk in that door, and before you get to Richard Quinn and Associates, you get to Southern Partisan Magazine, which is a magazine that the Quinns published. And in the back, you could find all kinds of Confederate paraphernalia, and you could also find lots of racist paraphernalia.
I think that's the same thing.
Well, if you want to consider it a history thing, if you have a collection of flags,
heritage, not hate,
like George Allen, who he only had Confederate stuff because he collected flags.
Right.
Then maybe you'd buy a flag or two off the back of this magazine, but you'd also be able to buy all kinds of overtly racist things that didn't even have the bogus patina of heritage. These are the people that were running John McCain's campaign in South Carolina. The moderate. The liberal, yes. And at the same time, the NAACP had their boycott, and we were talking before coming back from the break about Art Ravenel, the former state senator from
Uncle Arthur
from Charleston. Yes. And I was remembering when I was there that the NAACP had a boycott over the flag. This is before they brought it down from the Capitol and put it right in front of the Capitol.
Yes.
On its own.
On its own, yes.
Yeah. Yes. And he had said that he didn't want the National Association for the Advancement of Retarded People, his words, not mine.
Right. Don't be taken out of context.
Pushing South Carolinians around. Right. I didn't know that Peter worked on the radio show where he did this, but he, a lot of flack for those comments, went on the radio to apologize. And in his apology, he said that he wasn't apologizing to colored people. He was apologizing to retarded people for likening them to the NAACP.
Oh, bless his heart.
This is the heritage that they are protecting.
Yeah. Yes. So there's a bridge in Charleston, South Carolina, that 23,000 people walked across on Sunday in a show of unanimity, a show of unity of everybody, of every makeup of South Carolina. And that bridge is called the Arthur Ravenel Bridge, which just pisses me off.
Right.
And the reason it does is because the person that actually got the funds appropriated for that bridge was Fritz Hollings, not Arthur Ravenel. Yeah. But that's a separate issue.
Well, I mean, it goes so deeply in South Carolina. I like how the history of the Confederate flag in South Carolina has become, well, a Democrat put it back up there.
Actually, no.
No, David Beasley did not put it back up there. He benefited from a Republican governor who could not make up his mind on the flag.
Yes.
So a bunch of racist white people voted for a Democrat for the first time in a generation or two.
Right.
But
he was a one-term
governor. He was a one-term
Jim
governor.
Hodges was a one-time governor. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
He was a one-term governor, and the flag ended up on the staying up there until it was moved down front.
But even go back to the early 1960s when, and we discussed this earlier before you got here. Rush Limbaugh yesterday on his radio show said that Fritz Hollings put the flag on the Capitol dome. Fritz Hollings is a Democrat. He's retired from the Senate. He was governor in 1961, and that's a lie. Rush Limbaugh, you lied on national radio.
I believe it was in the 50s, wasn't it?
Actually, no. It was put up in 60. It was voted up 61 by a concurrent resolution of the democratically led House and Senate. These were Dixiecrats. These were, Strom Thurmond people. Right? Exactly. That's exactly right. So they put it up. And by the way, the governor of South Carolina at that time had no veto rights over a concurrent resolution. It was put up for 1 year. It was supposed to be for 1 year, but they left off a closure date on that. And that's the key, the thing that people don't remember. And it was put up because this one member of the House of Representatives in South Carolina, a guy named John May, M-A-Y. He was from Aiken, where my father's family is from. And John May used to run around the state capitol in a Confederate vest. And he demanded
Crick Santorum, you can get them while they're still hot.
That's exactly right. And so he put this up, and it stayed up. It had nothing to do with Fritz Hollings. It had nothing at all to do with Mr. Hollings.
Are you sure it wasn't 1860? Because it seems like if it was heritage, it would have been up a lot earlier than the Civil Rights Movement.
Well, you realize that what was going on at that point in time was the centennial of the Civil War. And so to commemorate, that was their whole point in doing it, putting it up for a year. And then it stayed up. People need to remember something about South Carolina at that time. Fritz Hollings was the governor. He talked about poverty. He led integration and desegregation in the state where there was no violence. In Orangeburg, in the schools, there was no violence, unlike most of the other southern states.
Well, this is one of the only southern states that, when leaving the Union, said that it was because of slavery.
Well,
they didn't say that it was because of states' rights.
Yeah, South Carolina left first.
They were at least honest about it.
You just said something interesting, states' rights. I'm fascinated by states' rights because 2 or 3 years ago, Chris Christie, who happens to be the governor of the great state of New Jersey, the Garden State, said that the issue of marriage equality should be left up to the states. Well, he's about to be, we hope, proven wrong. So I wrote a column and I said, I wonder if Chris Christie thinks that in 1963 that the issue of civil rights should have been left to the state of Mississippi.
His party does.
And so that's a problem, because here's the deal, folks. When it comes to this issue of states' rights, I get the idea of states' rights because, the dudes in the white wigs back in 1789 when they wrote the Constitution, and by the way, they all owned slaves, they struck this deal. Certain things the federal government would do, everything else would be left to the states, right? And I totally understand where that's coming from. But see, the problem with that is that when you leave slavery to the states, and you leave civil rights to the states, and you leave equal rights to the states, states tend to not do well. And so then you have to have a Supreme Court to say, hey, here's the deal, this is 2015, or this is 1954 in Brown, and et cetera, et cetera. And so I don't get this idea of whether someone saying that South Carolina should determine whether or not that flag should stay up, or people have equal access to education, or people have access to running water or electricity. Because these are human rights. That's a human right. Well, and I think that's something we should discuss because that's important.
States' rights is the linchpin here. It is the through line of the civil rights movement. And whenever, as a liberal, you talk about these issues, right-wing trolls are quick to say, well, you guys supported a Klansman out of West Virginia, or you're the party that opposed the end of slavery. Well, get rid of party labels for a moment and look at who has argued states' rights. Up and through the early civil rights movement, it was Democrats in the South who argued states' rights. And they did so to protect white privilege and to protect slavery in the South and eventually segregation in the South. And as things slowly changed, the Democrats became Dixiecrats in the South, and they slowly became party. And it was when the switch finally completed in 1994, when the Democrats of the South were finally comfortable calling themselves entirely Republicans.
Right.
The senators became Republicans.
This is when the Democrats lost the House and Senate.
It was the finalization of the realignment of the South, where they were now openly Republican as opposed to being Democrats.
The Lee Atwatering of the South, yes.
And the through line is the argument of states' rights. It is something that you hear Republican presidential candidates talk about now. It is something that you heard Democrats support supporting slavery in the South talk about in the run-up to the Civil War, and it is something that you heard proponents of segregation talk about during the Civil Rights Movement. So, yes, I don't think you'll find a Democrat who won't admit that the Democratic Party has a horrible history when it comes to slavery. But I have yet to find a Republican who is willing to be honest about where that history has led to.
So let's talk about those numbers. So from 1960 until now, the number of Democrats that have become Republicans is 245. And this is in the U.S. Congress and the state and local, right? The number of Republicans that have become Democrats, 104.
And that's primarily a swap between New England Republicans becoming Democrats.
That's correct.
I think there might be one now in New England. There might be 0 Republicans representing the House in New England. There's 1 senator, and in the South there might be 1 or 2 senators that are Democrats, and a handful of racially gerrymandered African American House members, and a few white House members. But it's a complete swap of memberships. There just happen to be a lot more seats in the South than there are in New England.
Do you think Lincoln could be elected today?
No.
As a Republican?
If we got rid of television.
Do you think Ronald Reagan could be elected
Oh, no, they couldn't be elected as Republicans.
Right.
Certainly not. I mean, if take away all of the artifice of modern campaigning and just run it on the issues, no.
We're gonna go to a break in a minute, but think about it. Ronald Reagan, Abraham Lincoln, not electable today as Republicans. We'll be right back.
This is the Bill Press Show.
Just this month, my bill was like $138.
Even at one phone call a week cost me $40 to $50 every month.
I am living on a fixed income of SSI, so this is really a great hardship. Families are being punished. When they incarcerate your children, they incarcerate the whole family.
In 2011, the Media Action Grassroots Network, Working Narratives, and Prison Legal News founded the Campaign for Prison Phone Justice, an effort to call on the FCC to address the cost of interstate phone calls. The campaign mobilized prisoners to send hundreds of letters. Advocates and families filled out postcards, met with elected officials, and signed petitions. Partnerships were formed across the political spectrum and with groups in the criminal justice, civil rights, and public interest community. The film distribution company Participant Media and director Ava DuVernay joined the fight through a social action campaign tied to the release of the feature film Middle of Nowhere. In an effort to push the FCC to act, the campaign hosted a historic rally outside of the Federal Communications Commission where for the first time, families of prisoners, elected officials, civil rights and faith leaders came together to call for an end to predatory phone rates.
We're all held captive when predatory phone companies gouge our families.
My son has been incarcerated now for over 10 years, and my husband estimates that in the time we spent over $25,000 on prison phone calls.
My hero's not yours, you probably arrested them. Your schools probably neglected them. They spawn thoughts, you probably infected them. Feed us what you feed us, you can lay us next to them. FBI call it major crimes. Babies making babies cry.
What the frack?
What the frack?
What the frack?
What the frack?
President Obama, are you fracking kidding me?
Reopen the EPA studies. In Texas, Wyoming, and Pennsylvania.
Fracking pollutes our oceans.
Fracking poisons our water.
Fracking makes climate change worse.
Fracking relies on toxic chemicals that cause cancer.
Ban fracking now.
Ban fracking now.
Go on. Ban it.
Ban fracking now.
Please.
On your radio, on TV, and online. This is the Bill Press Show.
And it's Jimmy Williams, and we are back live with Carl Frisch and my good friend Peter and Alicia and Jamie and Cyprian. Everyone's holding down the fort except for Bill Press. Oh, I'm so mad at him. But if he were here, I wouldn't be here, so that's fine too. You can tweet us at BP Show. You can also call us at 866-55-PRESS, 866-55-PRESS. Carl, you just said a word that I don't even know what to do with.
You have to really enunciate.
I think you do. Can you say that word?
So a good friend of mine lives in Georgia, and he has always said that they call proponents of the Confederate flag in Georgia, and I'm going to really enunciate. I'm going to practice good diction.
Mm-hmm.
They call Confederate flag supporters flaggots.
Oh, dear. Oh, dear.
So, hashtag flaggot. Hashtag flaggot, I guess.
This is going to go crazy on Twitter. You realize this, right?
This was a term that was coined by conservative talk radio host Neil Bortz, who's not in the business anymore.
Oh, so sad.
No, he gave his show to Herman Cain.
Yeah.
Oh, bless his heart too.
Yeah.
Yes.
But yeah, that was a whole thing. I remember hearing that during the whole fight. You know, these people who wanted the flag down, they were.
I do not remember this. Maybe I was like, I don't know.
I wouldn't blame you for blocking it out because it's not only offensive, it's just stupid.
Right. Well, I mean, at least the Republicans have come around a little bit on the symbol. It'd be nice if they would come around and do some things that were actually more than the symbol, like restoring voting rights.
Like Voting Rights Act. Because the Supreme Court told them to do that, by the way. Right? Yeah, take Title III and redo that part so that you don't,
so do something
voters.
for economic equality, maybe do something about police violence. They've staked out some ground on the incarceration rate of African Americans, at least the libertarians among them have. Right. It'd be great if they made some movement on any of those issues to show that not only are they offended by symbols, but they're actually offended by the bigotry that
Well, they're going to be able to do that. And the reason they're going to be able to do that is because if Hillary Clinton becomes president of the United States, she's already laid out in a speech at Columbia University how she wants to reform the criminal justice system. Right. And so they'll get the chance to vote on that. I'm excited about that. Let's go back to this issue of the transparent Republican Party and then the opaque Republican Party. I'm of the school of thought that this is going to split the Republican Party, specifically in the South.
Yeah.
Literally down the middle. Yeah. And it's going to disenfranchise or alienate a lot of really stringent, strident conservatives into saying we're simply not going to vote for Republicans that support taking this down.
You've got marriage equality just around the corner,
right?
And you've got mostly Southern Republicans who are saying that they will disobey the Supreme Court. That means that most of the institutional Republicans in Washington are going to say that this is settled, let's just move on. Mm-hmm. That's not going to sit well. Then you couple that with this. The only reason that the institutional Republicans in Washington are going to say it's settled, let's just move on gay marriage, and have come out against the flag, including the Republican candidates for president, have come out against the Confederate flag, is not because of anything moral or just.
Yeah.
It's because had they defended the Confederate flag, if they say things that are crazy anti-gay like they used to, women and independents primarily think that people like that are bonkers, and no matter what your other policy prescriptions are, they won't even consider you if they think you're crazy from step one. It has never been about Republicans winning black votes. It has never been about Republicans winning gay votes.
Right.
There simply aren't enough gay votes to matter.
It's about the female vote.
It's about women and independents.
Right.
If they lose women and independents, they cannot win an election. And that's what this is about. And you can tell that it's not a heartfelt shift of the party because all you have to do is go online. It is not something where there's some difference among people online in the party like there typically is on issues. Every single Republican who has come out against the flag is basically being branded as a Republican in name only, a squish, a liberal, no matter how conservative they are on everything else. Scott Walker is a liberal because he says the flag should come down. Rick Santorum is a liberal. I mean,
for showing up at a black church in Charleston, South Carolina to commemorate 9 people who died.
Right.
Right. This is fascinating to me. But it's not my problem. It's the Republicans' problem.
Darn right.
Damn right. We'll be right back.
This is the Bill Press Show.
Before now, it's been difficult for criminals like us to know which states have loose gun laws. How would a criminal like me know which states permit me to carry loaded guns in their amusement parks, golf courses, or beaches?
I have some violent friends. We all wear leather jackets and scream at women. And we want to find out which states we can buy and sell guns easily.
CrimAdvisor.com. That's the site to find out where it's easiest for felons and fugitives to buy, carry, and even traffic guns.
That's why I love Arizona, where I can go see the beautiful Grand Canyon and carry a loaded gun without even having to get a background check.
You would fail that background check.
I'm sure of it. Now, what about a road trip? What states can I go to fill my trunk with guns and take it back home for my even more dangerous friends?
CrimAdvisor has a list for that.
That's so unreasonable.
Our traffickers' top 10.
Nevada. What happens in Vegas may have to stay in Vegas, but your guns don't. Bring them over to California and sell them.
The market up there is hungry for guns.
I understand that CrimAdvisor.com will tell me which states really cater to us criminals and creeps, but what about the states where we're not so welcome? The ones that don't get us?
I don't even like saying the name of these states, but California, Connecticut, Maryland, and New York all have laws to keep guns out of the hands of people like us.
I want to shoot California so bad.
Boo, California.
Boo, go home. Wow. CrimAdvisor.com has all this information?
Sure does.
CrimAdvisor.com. Plan your perfect getaway. Oh, like TripAdvisor.
Oh.
You wouldn't let money just blow out of your house. So when your AC or heater is on, make sure the doors, windows, and fireplace flue are shut tight. If you're headed out, turn down the AC or lower the heat by 10 degrees. And always keep your water heater set at 120. A little bit of common sense goes a long way. Get more great tips at energysaver.gov.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. You know, but it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, you know, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello? That's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
The average text takes your eyes off the road for nearly 5 seconds. At highway speeds, that's enough time to travel the length of a football field. Stop the texts, stop the wrecks.
This is the Bill Press Show.
Yeah, this is Jimmy Williams, and we are back. Carl Frisch is with us at Carl Frisch, Carl with a K. Carl, any last thoughts, words, complaints?
This is not the end of the discussion. I think we're going to see a lot of chatter on these issues, which is not going to serve any Republican running for president well.
That's a good point.
I think that's exactly right. I mean, how do they get around this?
They don't.
How do you get all the southern states are moving their primaries up, right? I mean, South Carolina is first in the South,
right,
and they're all going to move them up. How do you get Republican voters in those southern states to have an allegiance or at least a fondness for the flag?
That's a good question.
If they come out against, then they're screwed. If they say nothing, then they're screwed.
Right.
Yeah. You can follow us at BP Show. You can follow me at Jimmy's Politics. And you can also follow my website at BlueNationReview.com, or sorry, www.BlueNationReview.com. Thanks for joining us today. Carl, thank you. Peter, Alicia, team, Jamie, Cyprian, you guys are the bomb. Bill Press, I love you and can't wait to hear you tomorrow morning. And thank you guys. Have a great day.
Good stuff.
Absolutely.
This is the Bill Press Show.